Yes.
Yes, this is the worst David Wood video you've ever seen. Let's just get right into it.
Okay.
All right, I can still hear you, and we're good.
Anna, Carl, Sigmund. My claws are the claws that cut the mind. In the film Logan, we learn that Wolverine naturally grows a full beard, which means that for the rest of the X-Men and Wolverine films, he was grooming himself so that he could look like this. Since Wolverine's hair grows at an accelerated rate, he must have been grooming himself daily. But why would he spend so much time in front of a mirror with a beard trimmer in order to give himself a particular look? Well, as we saw in an earlier installment of the franchise, young Wolverine was born in the 1800s to the wealthy landowners John and Elizabeth Howlett. Wolverine's birth name was James Howlett. One evening, poor Wolverine hears a bang and rushes downstairs to find that his father has been shot to death by the groundskeeper. The scene causes Wolverine's mutation to manifest, and he murders the groundskeeper with his bone claws. Tragically, it turns out that Wolverine's mother, Elizabeth, has had an affair with the groundskeeper, who shares these dying words.
He wasn't your father. Son.
Notice the groundskeeper's appearance. His name? Thomas Logan. Wolverine spent more than a century grooming himself to resemble his biological father, whom he had killed. He finally stopped the grooming sometime before the events in the most recent film, presumably after he had gained complete control over Professor X, a father figure who, ironically, was much younger than Wolverine.
You're probably wondering what this has to do with anything. He's gonna get.
Yeah, I am. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for what he's gonna get to. I am waiting.
And yet he continued calling himself Logan. Seems we never really grow out of childhood trauma. Neither do prophets. In our last session, we discussed some of the psychological research on the impact dead or abusive fathers have on the religious beliefs of their children. The evidence shows that
we don't need to watch part one. This is sufficient.
That history's most prominent atheists and skeptics tended to have dead or abusive fathers or father figures during crucial periods of psychological development, and that history's most prominent theists tended to have close relationships with their fathers or father figures during the same period of life. Further evidence shows that the theists had far more positive relationships as adults, suggesting that abuse or abandonment by a father or father figure during childhood has a negative impact not only on a person's understanding of God, but also on future relationships in general. We then turned our attention to one of history's most famous orphans, Muhammad. Shortly after his birth, Muhammad was sent to live with a foster family in the desert. A few years later, he was taken away from his foster family and returned to his mother, who died when he was just 6 years old. His grandfather was the next to take him in, but his grandfather died 2 years later. Custody of Muhammad then fell to his uncle, who was too busy to pay much attention to young Muhammad, at least until Muhammad was able to help out with the caravan trade. So Muhammad wasn't just orphaned, he was repeatedly orphaned. He was a serial orphan. And our knowledge of psychology allows us to predict some of the adult characteristics of a serial orphan. But it also allows us to do much more. It allows us to help Islam's greatest scholars understand Allah. Now, later in this series, we're going to discover what Allah actually is. Spoiler alert, Allah is the suppressed subconscious of Muhammad. For now, however, I'm more concerned with the fact that
this guy is so punchable, I swear to God.
Because Muslim scholars don't understand psychology, they don't understand Allah according to their own religion. They try to understand Allah's intentions, but their ignorance of psychology leads them to false conclusions. Perhaps an example will help.
This is new. At least this is like a new argument. I've never heard this before. So it's a little more interesting than his other videos because he's coming up with some new
Oh,
foolishness
this
now.
was back in 2017. So I
Oh
mean,
my God.
no, but he's going to resurface old arguments. He's going to try to use this to justify some arguments that we've kind of already heard. But this time around, he's going to make a fool of himself, and we're going to have fun ripping him apart.
Take Sheikh Yasir Qadi. Sheikh Qadi has spent many years studying the life of Muhammad, and he's lectured on Muhammad's childhood experiences.
So the Prophet's father passes away when his mother is pregnant with him. And his mother barely has 2.5 years really to take care of him and nourish him, because he was being taken care of by Halima as well. And then when the Prophet is barely 6 years old, he loses his mother and his father.
Moreover, Sheikh Qadi draws attention to the psychological impact of these childhood experiences. For instance, even the adult Muhammad broke down in tears when he visited the grave of his mother.
They say that the Prophet ﷺ found a grave over there, and he sat down and he cried like we had never seen him cry before, until his lihya, his beard, which is, mashallah, it is narrated the Prophet had a very big beard. His beard was wet with tears.
Muhammad, when he was more than 50 years old, was so troubled by something that had happened when he was 6 years old that he sobbed until his beard was soaked with tears. Can we say that Muhammad's repeated losses as a child had a significant psychological effect on him?
I mean, yeah, he was sad, like any human would be. Nothing more to it. Watch him.
But hold on. The thing is, Yasir Qadi did not. He is, as far as I know, Yasir Qadi is, as far as I know, some sort of an expert on the life of the Prophet ﷺ. But Yasir Qadi did not mention anything about the Prophet ﷺ's crying having anything to do with the Prophet ﷺ's childhood with his mother.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, there actually is a reason for his crying, actually, that is not related to his mother having died before him. And here's the thing. The Prophet ﷺ barely had 2 years, as David was just mentioning, he barely had 2 years to really be taken care of by his mother. Like, him and his mother never really had any more than 2 years of a relationship, because he was being taken care of by Halima radiallahu anha and her family. And there's actually a reason for that. So he didn't have a sad life just because he was away from his mom. He actually had a happy life, and it was better for him anyway.
Right.
The other thing is that his dad died before he was even born.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
And,
that.
Right. So a man came to, this is a narrated authentic hadith. It's either in Bukhari or Muslim, or it's in both. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, what happened to my father? Where is my father? Because this man is a Sahabi now. He just accepted Islam. So he's asking the Prophet ﷺ about his father, who's already died and never accepted Islam. Now, the people of Quraysh already knew about Allah even before the Prophet ﷺ came. And there were Jews and Christians in the world at the time who were actually practicing their religion properly as well, that the Quraysh knew of. And the Quraysh still rejected. So the Quraysh aren't like, oh, a messenger hasn't come to us yet. Actually, they already knew. But the Prophet ﷺ coming to them was to take away any excuses, and the Prophet ﷺ was a prophet to everyone. The point being that the Prophet ﷺ told that man, he said, your father is in the hellfire. So the man became very sad and turned away. And the Prophet ﷺ called him back, and to comfort him, the Prophet ﷺ said, both my and your father are in the hellfire. So we're in this together. My father's also in hellfire. And the Prophet ﷺ was able to say this very easily. So no,
yeah.
the death of his parent previously has absolutely no effect on him crying and sobbing.
And
as for the reason he was crying and sobbing about his mother, well, there's another authentic hadith where the Prophet ﷺ asked Allah and says, oh Allah, can I make istighfar for my mother? We already know about the verse in Surah Tawbah. كان للنبي والذين آمنوا أن يستغفروا للمشركين. Yeah. Exactly. And the Prophet ﷺ is seeking special permission if he can seek forgiveness for his mother, who was also a mushrik. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded to his dua, no. He's coming past his mother's grave knowing that obviously she's being
Right. It's not
so
separation.
so
See,
he
the Prophet understood.
so he's sad.
Yeah, the
Hmm.
Prophet understood that every soul will taste death. So yeah, of course, like any human, he would weep over not being able to see them anymore. But that wouldn't be the reason why he'd be so distraught and depressed. He wanted people to have salvation, and if his mother couldn't have salvation, then he'd be sad over that. And like I said before,
Yes.
his father died before he even got a chance to know him. Why would he be traumatized over that? Makes no sense.
Yes. True.
The fact that the Prophet ﷺ obviously is crying in this manner, I mean, we don't need to mention this is his mother. Really, it doesn't need to be mentioned the love that he must have felt and the pain that he must have endured at the death of Amina.
But keep in mind that from an Islamic perspective, Allah really, really loves Muhammad. At times, Allah seems to have nothing better to do than to give Muhammad anything he wants.
What?
Even Muhammad's child bride Aisha noticed this. One day, after Muhammad received one of his morally convenient revelations, Aisha said to him in Sahih al-Bukhari 4788, I feel that your Lord hastens in fulfilling your wishes and desires. So Allah loves Muhammad so much
I don't even feel like addressing that. I'm so sick of them bringing it up.
that he
It's a pretty weak argument. It's very
Really,
weak.
Allah,
It doesn't prove anything.
Allah rushes to fulfill the needs and desires of the believers. Why wouldn't he do that for his prophet? Why does this matter? They try and twist this to make it
Right.
sound like it's Allah saying that he makes special treatment for you and to give you whatever you want. If that were the case,
Because
he
obviously,
wouldn't be living in poverty.
the life of Jesus, God didn't care about him, and God made everything go against him and
Yeah.
everything. Of course. Right.
And we're going to get to some really juicy parts.
satisfy Muhammad's desires, and yet Muhammad was repeatedly orphaned as a child.
That fact alone belies the idea that what Aisha meant was Allah gives you whatever you want. That one fact alone, and the fact that he went through many other trials after that.
The thing is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what I believe Aisha radiallahu anha meant by that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rushes to comfort the Prophet sallam and make sure no one takes advantage of him. Just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, when you come into the house of the Prophet sallam, I forgot how the ayah goes, then, if you're invited, eat and then leave. Don't stay there. وَلَا مُسْتَأْنِسِينَ لِحَدِيثٍ that inna dhalikum kana yu'dhi nabi. This annoys the Prophet ﷺ and it hurts him. So the Prophet himself was too shy to tell people to leave. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did it. So this proves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was rushing to make sure that he was okay and people weren't taking advantage of him because of his kindness.
Right.
However, not necessarily to please the Prophet ﷺ, because Abu Talib never accepted Islam. Abu Talib never accepted Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ knows that Allah is in control of that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of that. And what was revealed to him, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You cannot guide whoever you love.
Not only that, but he wouldn't accept his istighfar for his dead mother, even though that's something he would have wanted.
Exactly. And I mean, David Wood is refuting his own argument. He's saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supposedly rushes to the Prophet's aid, or rushes to the Prophet to please the Prophet and everything, and this must prove that Allah is some psychological thing with the Prophet. But you're telling me he was repeatedly orphaned. He's a serial orphan. Well, according to Islam, who's responsible for the deaths of all of those people? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took their souls. So what does that mean?
So Allah loves Muhammad so much that he hastens to satisfy Muhammad's desires, and yet Muhammad was repeatedly orphaned as a child. The question that arises from Muslim scholars then is, why would Allah who spent so much time satisfying Muhammad's desires as an adult, not satisfy Muhammad's childhood desire for a mother and a father.
He's making a lot of assumptions here. He's assuming that we say that he satisfies his every desire, which we never said. Everybody's going to go through a test.
The funny thing about this guy is that he's using his contradiction as a question to us. It's a problem with him. I don't know how he did.
This guy astounds me.
Yeah.
Why did Allah Azza wa Jal put 3 orphan situations, 3 traumatic trials, one after the other, upon our Prophet?
The attempts of Muslim scholars to answer this question are a kind of theodicy. In the philosophy of religion, a theodicy is an attempt to explain why God, who's all-powerful and perfectly good, would allow various kinds of suffering in the world. An Islamic version of a theodicy would be an attempt to explain why Allah, who's all-powerful and loves to satisfy Muhammad's desires, put Muhammad through so much childhood trauma.
Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put so much trials and tribulations on the young child? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will such a difficult childhood?
Sheikh Qadi offers several explanations, but all of them are wrong. He claims that Allah repeatedly orphaned Muhammad so that he, Allah, would be the one who cared for Muhammad.
Like Allah says about Musa alayhi salam in the Quran, وَاصْطَنَعْتُكَ لِنَفْسِي, I was the one who took care of you. Allah Azza wa Jal took care of our Prophet ﷺ and took this responsibility directly.
But this is just nonsense. Muhammad was taken to the desert where a wet nurse from the Banu Sa'd cared for him. Then his mother cared for him until she died. Then his grandfather cared for him until he died. Then his uncle made sure that he didn't starve to death until Muhammad could start working. Where is Allah in all of this?
Allah is in all of it. But actually, he left out a very important clip from that lecture where Yasir was clarifying.
He's skipping a lot of stuff, but you know what? I've heard it like twice now, and I can't ignore it anymore. And it is that he keeps saying about Abu Talib, that Abu Talib just made sure, Abu Talib ignored him, didn't give him love, just made sure he ate until he could. I don't understand where he's getting that from, because in these books of Sirah, literally every book of Sirah, I'm talking every book, there's not even one book, every book of Sirah, it's explicitly mentioned that Abu Talib loved the Prophet ﷺ more than he loved his own children. And took care of the Prophet ﷺ more than he took care of his own children, and allowed the Prophet ﷺ to eat with him and to sit on his bed when he didn't allow his own children to do that. So I don't know.
As a matter of fact, in that very lecture that he was just showing a clip from, the Sheikh Qadi actually goes into a lot of details on that, because he's going through the whole biography. He lists, he mentions that, and this guy's just leaving it all out. But on top of that, he's mentioning the fact that when Allah says, when he's saying that one justification is that Allah will be the one to take care of him, it will be that that Allah would take care of you directly. You didn't have any human figures taking care of you the whole time, not through the entire process. Whenever something bad happened to you, Allah willed that something good would come and take care of you afterwards. Allah was taking care of him the whole time. And just because there are humans taking care of him involved in that, that doesn't now rule out Allah being the one in control of everything. Inna Allaha ala kulli shayin qadir. I don't know why he's doing this. But the thing is, though, what's so funny is that he's simultaneously acknowledging that the Prophet ﷺ did have people taking care of him. If he lost one parent, he had another one come in and take care of him. So it can't be said that he's like being abandoned or anything. He was always taken care of by someone. So there's no
and it mentions in the seerah that when his mom died, he was crying, he was sad, and then Ayman, if I'm not mistaken, was right there, and she hugged him and told him, you know, it's gonna be okay, everything's gonna be fine, we're gonna take care of you very well. And he stopped crying even at that young age of 6. And from that day on, he called Ayman my mother after my mother. So he used to call her Ummi by the Ummi. So it's like everyone. It's not just, oh, Allah did it personally, but Allah made in the Prophet ﷺ's life a bunch of people who always rushed to comfort him from the horrible sadnesses that he had to go through, which is something that was necessary. I mean, can you imagine the Prophet ﷺ's father surviving till he was like 25 or something? And how much that would have affected his life, how different his life would have been if his father was actually alive, around, and his father was a mushrik, teaching him to do shirk, and how and what people would say about the Prophet ﷺ, both then and now, about how he would explicitly go against his father. I mean, Ibrahim
Yeah, I was
alayhi
about
salatu
to
wasalam,
ask Ibrahim.
yeah, there are already opinions where Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, the father that he was talking about, Azar, is not his biological father. It's just his uncle, or a man who took care of him, his father's death, who he considered his father. So he called him uh, uh, father. There are actually legitimate opinions in Islam about that. But here's the thing. We don't know that much about Ibrahim alayhi and his father. We know general stories. His father was a super bad person. Ibrahim said a few things. The Prophet ﷺ's life and the stories concerning the Prophet ﷺ are extremely precise. No other prophet do we have his life story as precise as we do the Prophet ﷺ. We knew what the Prophet ﷺ did in his house. That means if the Prophet ﷺ's father was still alive and chose to be a mushrik, the Prophet ﷺ would have to deal with his own father as well. It was bad enough that the Prophet ﷺ, well, to other people, it was bad enough that the Prophet ﷺ was saying, oh, you guys, you're going to go to hell if you don't stop this. Your forefathers were wrong, and so on and so forth. But he would have to tell that directly to his own biological father, the man who raised him and fed him.
And taught him
How
all
would
that
people
nonsense.
respond? Exactly. How would people respond, like both in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and now, in the way the Prophet ﷺ would have no choice but to deal with his dad?
2 points to add.
And mhm.
I was just going
Go ahead.
2 points to add. What I want to add to that is that his father figure at that time, Abdul Talib, was even though he was a pagan, he was kind-hearted and he allowed the message to be preached. His father would not have done
Yes.
that. Then you also got to consider
Like-
the fact that, and we actually find this tradition throughout the Hadith, which is that when you see people around you passing away, it helps remind you that this life is temporary. Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. He learned that lesson at an early age by seeing people close to him die. He realized, because when we're kids, sometimes we have this thought in our mind, like we either think, when I was a kid, I was thinking either I'm not going to die, or I'm young, so it's going to be a long time from now, so I don't have to think about it. The Prophet ﷺ had to learn the hard way of that lesson at a very ripe age. So that's another thing you got to think about.
Right. And to say that his mother's death was so traumatic for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was like 50 years old and he couldn't control himself around her. Well, I'll tell you something. The Prophet ﷺ loved his son more than he loved his mother, because his mother was first of all, she was not even Muslim. Second of all, he only had like 2 years with his mother. Like, the one who fed and breastfed him more was another woman anyway. But his son Ibrahim, the Prophet ﷺ wanted a son for a long time. Both of his sons, one or both, there are differences of opinion, that Khadija radiallahu anha gave birth to two sons, Abdullah and Qasim. Both of them died. By the way, the sons of the Prophet, Qasim is the firstborn of the Prophet, or the first child of the Prophet is actually Qasim. It's a boy. It's not girls. The girls that survived were not his first children. His first child was a boy, and that boy died. His second, a boy, and the boy died. Then his daughters were born one after the other. Then, so much later on in his life, he finally gets another boy. This boy is born alive and healthy. He takes care of the boy and holds the boy and kisses the boy and falls in love with the boy for about 2 months or so. Then the boy dies on him. And the Prophet ﷺ weeps but not uncontrollably, because the boy is okay in the afterlife.
Well,
And the people ask,
it seems
Ya
to me
Rasulullah, are
like.
you?
Oh, continue.
Oh, and the boy, they asked the Prophet ﷺ, they were like, why is it that you're crying? You're crying, Ya Rasulullah? The Prophet ﷺ said, yes, crying is a part of the natural tendencies of human beings. It's something that we do, and it's something that is okay. But we never say something or do something that will displease Allah just because we lost a loved one. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't weep so profusely, losing the son he finally wanted to get, because his son is okay in the afterlife. Whereas that's not the same story for his mother.
You remember in that mockery video, Muhammad meets the Joker? This same point was brought up, only was turned into a joke. This is basically the analysis of that. Although this came out way before that. But you know, based on everything we've been talking about, it seems like Allah hastens to fulfill his needs and wants and desires. All this trauma going through, losing all of his sons that he wanted so badly. Of course.
Now, of course, you can say, well, Allah is providing for Muhammad through all of these people. But you can say the exact same thing about children who have two wonderful parents. How are wonderful parents not a blessing from God? So how does...
He didn't say they weren't. Were he putting words in his mouth? All he said was that Allah was taking care of him. Look, it's kind of like, you know how an atheist might think, because you know everything we have in life is a blessing from Allah. Even the technology that we create, that we build, is a blessing from Allah in one way or another. An atheist might think that that is what's giving them their rizq, and someone who isn't so attached to that materialism, like they have to live off the land, they're a farmer or a Bedouin, they see nature as it is, and they see themselves as being benefited by the supernatural in some way or another. It's not that one is a benefit from Allah and another is a benefit from the dunya. Both are, but one gives you perspective over the other. One helps you understand that it's from Allah, whereas the other blinds you from it, depending on how you use it or do it, what you do with it, basically. David was a terrible theologian.
Repeatedly orphaning Muhammad make Allah more of a caregiver to Muhammad. Apart from this, Allah's miraculous care goes completely unnoticed. By the time Muhammad starts receiving revelations when he's 40 years old, he thinks he's demon-possessed. So,
citation needed. I'm so sick of hearing this. You have no idea how many... He brings this up all the time. I've never read a single narration of the beginning of Revelation that said that he thought he was being demon-possessed. And even if I did, wouldn't that just be because he was so scared of his first interaction with the most powerful angel in creation? That doesn't mean he thought evil presence was by him.
Yeah, the thing you have to understand is the Prophet ﷺ is just an everyday regular human. He knew Allah just like the Quraysh did, and he only sought to worship Allah, and he never worshipped the idols like the Quraysh did. But the Prophet ﷺ was still a normal human who did not have knowledge of the scriptures before himself. He did not have knowledge. Like Waraq ibn Nawfal, radiyallahu anhu, had more knowledge than the Prophet ﷺ at a certain point, which is amazing to know that the Prophet ﷺ at a certain point didn't even know more than the cousin of Khadija radiallahu anha. Why? Because he had the previous scriptures. He was learning about God, whereas the Prophet ﷺ was still wandering. وَوَجَدَكَ ضَالًّا فَهَدَى, as Allah says. The Prophet ﷺ was still wandering, still looking for the right way, and he used to do that by meditating in the cave of Hira and finding out what's going on, because his people were very weird people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala finally guided him. And of course, when this first guidance came and he met this angel, and this angel said to him what he said to him, the angel also squeezed him very hard. All of that was involved in it. He obviously, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was very, very afraid, and there are narrations that explains his fear. And I mean, we can go to that later. But I actually wanted to mention something concerning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's teenage years. So this is something we don't hear about that often, but it does exist within certain books of Sirah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's teenage years. Not much is mentioned about it, but there are some things that we know from the Prophet ﷺ's teenage years. For instance, the Prophet ﷺ met a man and that man was a man from Quraysh. Or I don't know whether he was from Quraysh, but he was from Mecca, and he is a man who used to find daughters, find little girls who are about to be buried or murdered by their fathers, and he used to convince the father to just give the daughter to him, and he'll never have to see that daughter ever again. And the father would agree, and he would take the daughters, and he used to collect many little girls, and he used to raise a lot of little girls, and he also never worshipped the idols. He chose to worship Allah only. And the Prophet ﷺ explained, after the Prophet ﷺ got revelation, mentioned this man and said that man is in Jannah. He has 2 gardens because he used to take care of those little girls, and because he only believed in Allah. Also, another incident from the Prophet ﷺ's teenage years was the Prophet ﷺ went to one of the parties of the Quraysh. So the Quraysh had a big party one night.
Oh yeah, I know about that.
And yeah, and the Prophet ﷺ went there, and then the Prophet ﷺ felt just, he was like, oh man, I'm exhausted. And he just fell down. He was knocked out for the whole night, and until the sun was over his head. Then the Prophet ﷺ finally woke up and was like, something's wrong with these parties that I can't even stay up when I'm there. So the Prophet ﷺ just stopped going. And it was things like that throughout his teenage years that caused him to start wondering the truth and to look for the truth, basically to look for more knowledge, which he did in the cave of Hira. But I'm saying, if you're looking at his teenage years and he's not sulking and dying over his mom, and teenagers are a lot more vulnerable than 50-year-olds, then don't tell me that when he was 50-year-old, he was still struggling with the death of his mom. Yeah. It's not the death. It's what that entails. She did not. That's why he asked to seek forgiveness for her.
And I mean, I gotta be honest, he had a lot of other loved ones. He loved Abu Talib, and he also loved Khadija more than Aisha.
Yes.
And he wasn't sobbing in depression till the moment of his death over their deaths. In fact, he had contentment when he knew that Khadija achieved salvation, so he was fine. I mean, he was
right
for the most part.
The crazy thing is that the hadith that mentions, or the narration that mentions within the seerah, that he passed by his mother's grave and started his mother's grave, or a grave, and then remembered his mother and started weeping severely, and the Sahaba did say that he was crying in a way we never saw him cry before, and so we started crying with him. So yes, that was mentioned. Well, that's a little strange, isn't it? Because when you look at Khadija radiallahu anha, she died. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, proof that he loved Khadija radiallahu anha more than he loved his mom at the end of the day, was the fact that Khadija radiallahu anha died, and after the death of his wife Khadija radiallahu anha, he didn't even try to get married, by the way.
Oh yeah.
He did not look for a wife. It was Ayman radiallahu anha, if I'm not mistaken. It was her who told him, you need to get married. You need another woman to help you take care of these young girls. They need a woman in their life. They need an example. So the Prophet ﷺ married Sauda. Right after that, the Prophet ﷺ didn't want to get married again. He didn't have any particular interest in doing so. Then Allah reveals to him he must marry Aisha. The Prophet ﷺ marries Aisha, and then from then on it continues. But the Prophet ﷺ himself had no particular interest, or he wasn't looking to get married after the death of Khadija. That's number one. Number two, way after Khadija radiallahu anha's death, he's married to Aisha radiallahu anha, has already consummated with Aisha radiallahu anha, and so on and so forth. Hala bint Khuwaylid, who is the sister of Khadija radiallahu anha, comes to the Prophet's house. She's coming to visit her brother-in-law, so she seeks permission to enter. Hala radiallahu anha is very similar to her sister Khadija radiallahu anha in their voice and in the way they talk. Their speech, the way they structure their sentences was very similar. They have a similar way of talking. And the Prophet ﷺ noticed that so fast, because Hala radiallahu anha sought permission to enter, and the way she sought permission was the same way Khadija radiallahu anha used to seek permission, the wording. So the Prophet immediately remembered his wife who had died, and this is a long time ago by now. And the Prophet ﷺ becomes visibly uh, 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 disturbed by it, or affected by that, and says, Allahumma hala, Allahumma hala, oh Allah is hala, oh Allah is hala. And then Aisha radiallahu anha is right there, and she just becomes very angry and very jealous and says some things that she probably shouldn't have said radiallahu anha. But the point is, here he is, the Prophet ﷺ, remembering Khadija radiallahu anha constantly. And in some hadith, Aisha radiallahu anha explicitly mentions that to the Prophet ﷺ. You constantly remember this woman who died of old age, and you just can't stop thinking of her, and you have so many wives, and life has moved on besides her, and Allah has replaced her with better. And these were the words of Aisha, because she was very jealous at the time. And the Prophet ﷺ became angry with her and says, Allah has not replaced her with better. Don't ever say that you guys are better than her. Allah has not replaced her with better. And the Prophet ﷺ gave his reasons. So it goes to show the Prophet ﷺ was preoccupied in very often about the memory of his wife.
But we
Yet
don't,
he did not die and cry.
But at the same time, you don't find that level of reverence and remembrance for his mother. It's all Khadija.
Yes. Yes. And yet he cries severely for his mother and not Khadija. This goes to show, again, it was about the hereafter.
Right.
Yeah.
So what did Allah ultimately accomplish by caring for Muhammad by taking away everyone who was close to him?
Allah has a plan.
Everyone.
Allah has a plan.
Sheikh Qadi also claims that Muhammad was orphaned so that he could be sent to the desert to learn excellent Arabic. The Arabic of the cities was regarded as corrupted because the city dwellers picked up too many foreign terms and so on. But the Arabic of the desert was...
Okay, just a quick note. That was a side note. That was like one of those besides ... sort of points. That wasn't like Allah sent him here so we can learn Arabic. That wasn't what he was saying.
pure. And this
By the way, not only that, that's incorrect. That's incorrect reasoning anyway. Okay, so I read the Sirah. I don't think Yasir Qadi said that, but if he did say that, I don't think he meant that. Because during the time of the Meccans, actually, whether you had a dad or a mom, it doesn't matter. If you had both your kids, people would send their children into the desert. So it has nothing, it's not connected with him being an orphan.
Actually, David does mention that. And he does show a clip from Yasir Qadi sort of saying that.
Okay.
Another benefit of this is that this facilitated the Prophet's being raised in the Banu Sa'd so that he could become the most eloquent of the Arabs.
3 problems here. First, sending babies to live in the desert for a while was a custom of the rich. Muhammad only ended up being taken there because one of the desert wet nurses who came to Mecca couldn't find anyone else and was ashamed to go back without a baby. So Allah didn't need to orphan Muhammad to have him sent to the desert to learn Arabic. Wealthy parents would have done that, as even Sheikh Qadi admits.
In fact, this was a custom of the elite of the Quraysh. It was a custom of the nobility of the Quraysh.
Second, Muhammad was only in the desert for a few years. He was around 4 years old when he was sent back to his biological mother in Mecca. Sheikh Qadi's Theodicy requires us to believe that Muhammad became history's greatest master of Arabic at the ripe old age of 4.
And it is well known that the Prophet ﷺ spoke the best Arabic, and in fact there is a hadith to this regard as well, that Allah has blessed me with the most succinct, the most precise of all speech.
Third, Sheikh Qadi's claim actually backfires against the main argument for the truth of the Quran. The Quran's central argument is that any chapter of the Quran is so wonderfully written, no other writer can match its Arabic prose. But if Muhammad was history's greatest master of Arabic, no one would be able to match his Arabic, right? So even if the Quran were truly unsurpassable, which it isn't, but even if it were, we could just attribute this to Muhammad's unsurpassable Arabic eloquence.
Okay, there's so much wrong with that. I don't even know where to begin. Let's start with the fact that you don't know Arabic, so you can't even make the argument that the Quran isn't eloquent. Let's also say he didn't master, even if he did, which I don't know if it was said that he did master Arabic at 4. That's irrelevant. If you learn enough of the language, then you're well on your way to mastering it, no matter how young you are. So him mastering it
Yeah,
at 4 is unbelievable.
let's deal with this systematically. This is very easy. So, okay, so Yasir Qadi mentions what he mentioned, and David Wood is using it and trying to make certain arguments and so on and so forth. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ, as for him being the best Arabic speaker per se, in terms of his eloquence in the Arabic language and his amazing usage of the language, no. I've never seen that in any seerah. That the Prophet ﷺ had the best usage of the Arabic language linguistically and grammatically. No, that's not true. However, the Prophet ﷺ did have the best speech. What that means is he was just smarter than other people. That's all it means.
Well,
He had a way with words.
Qadi actually
Having
mentioned the hadith where it says that a single phrase that he would use could be explained in so many hours to have so many layers of meaning. That's what the hadith meant.
Right.
Right. That's all.
That hadith does say that.
Yeah.
And that hadith is utitul jawami al kalim. I've been given a concise language, meaning I have my way with my words, that if I speak in a certain way, I can encompass so many things. It means the Prophet ﷺ thought 7 times before he talked, unlike most people. But it doesn't mean the Prophet ﷺ was excellent with all the words and the language, and he could make plays on the stuff and so on and so forth. And I will explain how he didn't do that, but he was capable of something else. And the Quran is very excellent in its linguistic capabilities. The Prophet ﷺ, his linguistic or grammatical capabilities, or the ability to play with the language and explore it and go all over it and so on and so forth, is not comparable. Not only is it not comparable to the Quran, it's not even comparable to other Arabs who are kuffar. Other Arabs who are kuffar. One of them being Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, if I'm not mistaken, who was one of the greatest poets of all time. Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, after hearing the Quran, the Quraysh had a big gathering, and they wanted to speak about this Quran that they're hearing now. And they said, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it? What do we say about it? And so they called the most knowledgeable people concerning the language. They all said their two-piece thing. Abu Jahl got up and said, you know, guys, let's just call it magic, and then we'll spread that propaganda and tell the people to close their ears because the magic will affect them. And the people said, oh, that's a good idea. Another guy said, let's just say he's lying, because if someone says he's lying, it doesn't matter how cool it is. If someone believes that it's a lie and it's not true and it's going against the most basic and fundamental things, then people will reject it, and so on and so forth. They came up with all that stuff. Then they asked Walid to get up. Walid got up and he said, guys, Amma Ba'd, let me tell you guys something. All of you know. And he was talking to the greatest people of Quraysh. Even, what's his name was there? Abu Sufyan bin Sakhr was there, who became a Sahabi later on, radiallahu anhu, who was also a poet. And almost everyone in the room was a poet. Like, everyone was a poet. They were masters of their language. Walid said to them, guys, everyone knows in this room, and I know, hands down, I am the undisputed master of the Arabic language in Quraysh. No one can challenge me. My poetry is better than everyone's poetry. And no one disagreed with him. Even though Arabs were very, very, very competitive, no one disagreed with him. He was absolutely undisputed. And he said, and I'm going to tell you right now, this Quran that he came with is not magic. It's not poetry. It's not a lie. And they said, then what is it? What is it? Actually, he said it's not poetry. It's not, you know, a lie, and so on and so forth. And they said, what do we say? He said, it's not even magic, but the best thing we can go with is saying it's magic, because magic remains unexplainable to us. And the Quran is also unexplainable to us. So we'll just chalk it up to magic. But that goes to show Walid ibn Mughira's amazing ability concerning the Arabic language, and how he was not worried about the Prophet ﷺ's greatness in Arabic, and so on and so forth. The second point that I want to mention, and this point inshallah should drive everything home, is that the Prophet ﷺ used to like poetry to an extent. He used to like to hear other people's play on words, and he used to learn from it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which goes to show his Arabic isn't the best because he used to learn from other poets. Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, who was a Sahabi, used to be a master poet, and he asked the Prophet sallallahu for permission to use poetry against the Jews, because the Jews were using poetry, and the Jews were composing poetry against Muslims and against Muslim women, saying filthy things about Muslim women and their promiscuity and nasty things like that. And Hassan said, Ya Rasulullah, is it okay for me to respond to them in my poetry and absolutely destroy them? And the Prophet allowed him to do so, because the Prophet himself can't compose that kind of poetry, of course. But here's the thing. The Prophet one time heard the poetry of a particular man, and he liked it. So the Prophet said, what did that man say again? And the Prophet tried to quote him. Then the Prophet did so, and he messed up something in the line. It wasn't exactly that way. He said the same meaning, but the way he worded it was wrong. And that goes to show his linguistic ability to play around with the language wasn't masterful, or it wasn't better than a bunch of other people in the world. However, the Prophet ﷺ could say something according to its meaning. He did have that ability. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was right there and said, no, Ya Rasulullah, the line goes like this. And the Prophet ﷺ, what did he say? Showing the Prophet ﷺ didn't have particularly any appreciation for the absolute mastery and the art of the language and what you could do with the language. The Prophet himself didn't have that much appreciation for it. So what did he say? He said, same. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He actually said that to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr corrected his poetry, and the Prophet said, same. It means the same thing. And Abu Bakr said, no. This is poetry. It's different from normal talking. It's not the same. And then Abu Bakr proceeded to say to the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I swear by Allah, I bear witness to the verse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Yasin, وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ. We did not teach him poetry, and it's not befitting for the Prophet ﷺ to know poetry. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ وَقُرْآنٌ مُبِينٌ. This is nothing but a remembrance and a Quran that is clear. It goes to show the Prophet ﷺ didn't have any particular appreciation for art and mastery of linguistics and so on and so forth. His ability in the Arabic language, however, was that the Prophet ﷺ was a very intelligent man, and he spoke with intelligence, and that was where his eloquence came from. And that's done. That complete argument is destroyed just because of those particular incidents. That's over. There's nothing left he can say.
Literally what Yasir Qadi said in the video. David just left that out. He gave a hadith explaining what it meant to have his, his level of speech. David just didn't want to show that. He's so honest.
Good point. In other words, Sheikh Qadi should be making the exact opposite claim here. He should be arguing that Muhammad's Arabic was awful and that the Quran's Arabic is wonderful. And therefore...
I mean, if he did that, then you would be able to criticize the hadith a lot. Like, because you've got to think about it. If his Arabic was awful, then the hadith would be incomprehensible. We have volumes and volumes and volumes of books recording these things. If his Arabic was awful, how would we be able to make fiqh rulings, fatwa, how would we be able to make aqidah classes and all that stuff if his Arabic grammar and his choice of words was terrible? So that wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah.
Just because it has good Arabic doesn't mean it now means the Quran was because of his good Arabic. Those two things don't connect.
Exactly.
That the Quran couldn't have come from Muhammad. In fact, Muhammad's Arabic is apparently better than the Quran's Arabic. Sheikh Qadi regards Arabic with foreign words as impure.
Now the Arabs viewed the language of the cities as being corrupted. The Arabs viewed the city language as being changed. Why? Because what happens to any language, it gets influenced by other cultures.
But the Quran contains numerous foreign words.
He said it got influenced by foreign cultures. Not that they use foreign words. In a language, you're going to have to use foreign words at some point. That wasn't the argument.
The thing, what you have to understand about David Wood is he's trying to make plays and arguments and back attacks and sneaking around the door kind of foolishness with the video of Yasir Qadi. And he thinks that because it's Yasir Qadi and he's doing that to Yasir Qadi, Muslims will lose faith because Yasir Qadi is so amazing and he's better than every other scholar in the world because of his popularity. But what he needs to understand is that Let's say Yasir Qadi actually said that and meant that, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter. What matters is what is true.
Right.
Guess what? The Prophet ﷺ used to use expressions from other people's languages. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to do that. That was not Arab. They were not Arab terms, and it comes in authentic hadith. He used to use words that were not Arab terms. They were Persian terms, or they were this terms or that terms outside of his culture. So he used to have that kind of speech as well. So
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like this.
yeah.
We have a lot of words in English. English is a petri dish of a bunch of languages. We have a lot of words in English
Yep.
that come from other languages. The thing is, once they're integrated into that language and the grammar rules are accommodated for it, then it becomes a word of that language. Like, we have words like, what's an example? Like psychology. Psychology comes from Greek, but we use it in an English in our English sentences, and is perfectly grammatically compatible. It doesn't mess up what we're trying to say. We've managed to integrate. And
Do you see that?
it's not like the Quran having foreign words is the same as, for example, like let's take for example the term "what a day." You can't say "what a day" in Arabic. It's not like the Quran takes a term which is incompatible from another language and tries to force it into the Arabic language. That's not what it does. It just uses a word that might have some roots or some roots from another language or transliteration from another language. And then you also have to consider the fact that the Quran is trying to confirm, Allah is confirming these scriptures before from other prophets. These other prophets came from other cultures and other languages. So obviously it's going to speak or deliver their message from their perspective. There's going to be words like Adam or Ibrahim. They weren't Arabs, so it's going to include their names in there. It's not going to.
But I'm shocked, frankly, that he actually is dumb enough to put names of prophets who weren't Arabs and actually use that against the Quran. Like, that's not even an argument at that point.
Yeah, it's not.
And this guy is saying, this guy has a list saying Ar-Rahman is not an Arabic word. What?
Yeah, what is this?
What?
Zahan?
But Ar-Rahman follows. Okay, here's what you need to
Ankabut?
understand about.
Ankabut. Okay, Imran. Yeah, we know Imran isn't an Arab.
It's, but here's what I want to say about an Arabic word. So Arabic itself has rules. When you start studying Arabic, it actually has rules for words that are non-Arabic words,
Right.
which is the amazing thing about Arabic. And basically, it's like this. So you've read, you're Hafiz now, Allahumma barik. You've read the entire Quran. Did you ever hear Ibrahimi?
Ibrahimi? No.
Yes. Never. It doesn't exist in the
Right.
Arabic language to put a kasra at the end of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam's name, because it's not an Arab name, and as a result it doesn't have
Right,
complete
this is-
transformation abilities within the Arabic
Right,
language.
this is book
However,
one
there's
stuff.
Muhammad. Yes, this is book one stuff. Muhammadun, Muhammadan, Muhammadin. But you have only Ibrahimu and Ibrahima. You have what do you call it again? Hud. Yes, and then you have Hud, Hudan, and Hudin, Arab prophet. You have Salih, Salihan, Salihin, Arab prophet. Shu'aibun, Shu'aiban, Shu'aibin, Arab prophet. Because these are Arabic names that actually have full transformation. You have Nuhun, Nuhan, and Nuhin. And that's because he transcends any particular other language, just like Adam alayhi salatu wasalam.
Literally, using this
Anyway,
argument
no,
is like saying the Quran contains. What's a good argument? The Quran contains stories that took place outside of Arabia, so it must not be perfect Arabic. That is actually the level of stupidity from this argument. The fact that the Quran has foreign words means nothing, because the Arabic language has rules to how to deal with foreign words. It integrates foreign words. There's no problem with doing that. You guys have been doing it from the beginning.
Okay, I need you to give me a minute. I'm probably gonna have to get my charger because my phone is like dying all of a sudden.
You do that.
So I'm gonna run inside and come back. Okay.
Okay. Okay, I clicked this by mistake. I was just trying to show this one clip from it. Real quick, I just want to see this because this is like poetically retarded.
Oh, he just came up with a new religion that said, oh, there's only one God and Muhammad is his prophet. That's
right, because, because he's almost implying that Christianity teaches there's not just one God. He said, oh, this new religion says there's only one God. We don't believe there's one God.
what they came up, but he retained a whole bunch of this pagan garbage and a bunch of perverted things just because.
Oh yeah, in context, he's talking about the Prophet's marriage to Aisha. So check out what he has to say about it.
Was in Arabia amongst a bunch of pagans and perverts. Look, all Muhammad did was grow up in a wicked place in Arabia where a bunch of pagans were worshiping idols and false gods. And you know, he just came up with a new religion that said, oh, there's only one God and Muhammad is his prophet. That's what they came up. But he retained, condoned it. Well, then they were a bunch of perverts. Right. Because people around him supposedly condoned that, even if that's even true. That's just what Muslims will claim, that, oh, people back then condoned it. Well, then they were a bunch of perverts. Right. Because that's disgusting, and it is wicked, and it is not something that the Bible teaches. In fact, the Bible contradicts this. Go to.
I love this guy.
This is like, I don't. How do you get up on a pulpit? How do you get up on a stage and say this without thinking? Okay, before I say this, let me research it before I get up here, because everyone, I could pull it up right now. There's so many verses in the Bible that say that marriage is for when the woman has reached the age of childbearing. Some women got married very, very young, much younger than Aisha back during biblical times. Biblical commentators acknowledge this. Jewish commentators acknowledge this. Jewish historians acknowledge this. This isn't new. Even Paul said it in 1 Corinthians, I can't remember exactly where, that the marriage is when you hit puberty. This isn't some new thing that Muslims are inventing to say you guys have the same problem. Everybody already knew this before you got up there.
Chapter 7.
Well,
1 Corinthians chapter 7. The Bible has all the answers, and the Bible condemns pedophilia. And in this book, it says, you know, hey, if they haven't yet had their cycles, you know, here's how you divorce them. You know, that's weird that you're even married to somebody who hasn't had their cycles yet. That is a false doctrine. Okay. Now, look what.
Okay, he was about to quote the verse. Then he found it, realized it didn't support what he was saying. It's like, if they're not on the cycles yet, don't marry them. Like, okay, that's what we said. So thanks, Stephen. Anyway, back to David.
This guy is such a loser.
Let's get back to David. Let's get back to David.
Yasir Qadi regards Arabic with foreign words as impure.
Language, it gets
uninfluenced by foreign vocabulary, and the Arabic of cities like Mecca is corrupted because it's been influenced by foreign vocabulary, and the Arabic of the Quran has been influenced by foreign vocabulary. Then the Arabic of the Quran is corrupted and is inferior to the Arabic of Muhammad.
Foreign vocabulary was the
when
problem.
He was a 4-year-old. A 4-year-old's Arabic was superior to Allah's Arabic. Better luck next time, Yasir Qadi. The only remotely plausible theodicy here would be some form of what's called a soul-building theodicy. Soul-building theodicies claim that God sometimes allows suffering because suffering can make us better, more virtuous people. Being in dangerous situations, for instance, can produce courage. Going through various trials can build endurance, and so on. So, how does being repeatedly orphaned make one a better, more virtuous person?
being an orphan gives you many qualities that the Prophet ﷺ would need later on in his life. And when our Prophet ﷺ is deprived of a mother and father, automatically this makes the child more independent. It makes the child more mature, gives him wisdom. Also, going through these difficult times makes you...
He just skipped another important part where he talked about poverty and empathy, where someone who is without has empathy for others who are also without. That compassion for that. Hang on a second, clarification necessary. What I meant was that he left out the clip where Yasir Qadi was talking about how being without resources and someone taking care of you and pampering you all the time would have you wake up and realize that you got to take care of yourself, thus making you more independent. But there's no denying the fact that you have to be more independent and responsible if there aren't as many people or any people taking care of you. But it makes no difference anyway, because the Rasulullah always had someone taking care of him. I'll leave a link to the entire lecture in the description, just in case any of you are curious. Of course, David was going to strawman it anyway, just give him a chance.
Understand and experience firsthand poverty, ruthlessness, living in a harsh environment, and generally speaking, this makes you more sensitive. By going through this traumatic time, our Prophet ﷺ developed that fondness, that softness, that mercy, that tenderness for not just orphans, but all those who are weak, and this is a necessary requirement for being a prophet. Once again, our Prophet ﷺ is going through tough times in order to be compassionate, in order to be merciful. And that is why there are so many ahadith about taking care of orphans. Our religion has it as a central pillar to take care of the orphan. And our Prophet ﷺ was an orphan. There is a divine wisdom. Nothing happens except that Allah has a plan behind it.
My goodness, listening to Sheikh Qadi, we might conclude that the best thing we can do for our children is abandon them. They may not like it, but it'll turn them into strong, independent, mature, sensitive, compassionate people. Now, what's...
You are so dumb, it hurts. How can you take something... Okay, the philosophy here is very simple. Whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. That's it. It's not that it's a good thing to go through things that could kill you. It's not that, okay, for example, war is a bad thing. And to have to go and fight in war and kill people and families get separated and lives get destroyed, that property damage and all that, that's not a good thing. But if you come out of it unscathed and still on the right path, you become a stronger, better person. That doesn't mean it was a good thing for it to happen in the first place. Now you're just putting words in his mouth.
What's wrong with Sheikh Qadi's claim that Allah needed to destroy so many of Muhammad's early relationships in order to make him mature and sensitive and compassionate? Well, there are multiple problems. One, Allah had Muhammad's heart miraculously cleansed twice during his life. Once when he was a child and once when he was an adult.
There is no other more relationship because Jibreel took it out. هذا حظ الشيطان منه. He took it out. And then he washed the heart in a golden cup of Zamzam. This incident of taking the heart out and washing it occurred one more time, almost 45 years later.
Now, if your heart is miraculously cleansed of sin, aren't you going to be compassionate towards orphans? Did Allah really need to go the extra mile by orphaning Muhammad over and over again?
You not having a connection between shaitan does not now mean that you don't need to go through any more tests or trials or tribulations. If anything, that means you're going to go through more tests, trials, and tribulations. The fact of the matter is, having empathy for someone isn't the same as being sinless or being virtuous.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, when the Prophet's heart was cleaned out, it was a part of it, something was removed. That is the portion of shaitan that shaitan has over every person from Bani Adam. That was removed. So shaitan has no longer a part of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that's not to say that his past experiences, his life, what he went through, and so on and so forth doesn't have an effect on him. Rather, it doesn't have a negative effect on him. So all the, you see, he's talking about the Prophet's childhood and all that death and everything had a negative effect on him. That was his, that's how he started this whole video. His argument is that, oh, the Prophet went through all of this. Look at him, he's 50 and he's still dying and having problems with this. Well, those two visits, which both happened before the incident of his mother, was to take out all of the negative things, the negative effects of all of his experiences in life, whereas the positive effects remain intact, because the negative effects come from shaitan. Shaitan convinces you that just because you had a bad childhood, you should go and kill people, which is like every villain in
Right.
comic books. It's like, I had a bad childhood, so I get to, I can go and kill people.
You know what's
It
actually
has to
so
be,
poetically self-refuting about this, though? By acknowledging, first of
yeah.
all, two things, a side note. By acknowledging that the prophet had his heart washed twice, eliminates this, because you know this argument comes up a lot that he wasn't sinless, he asked for forgiveness for his sins, so you should turn to Jesus because Jesus was sinless. So yeah, we can put that to rest once and for all. We're done. We don't ever have to hear that ever again. He just acknowledged that that's not true. So we're done with that. The second issue is that if he was washed of sin, as David is admitting the Sirah actually claims, then you cannot now say that he had trauma from his loved one's deaths that led him to become a sociopath when he became an adult. That doesn't
Exactly.
follow.
The other thing is just, and this is just for to say something about the Prophet ﷺ. David Wood and all these other guys are like, okay, here's why you should follow Jesus. Even in Islam, you should follow Jesus because Jesus wasn't touched by shaitan, and the Prophet ﷺ was, because everyone else was except Jesus and his mom. So since Jesus wasn't touched by shaitan, he's so
So
great
we
and
should
so
follow
amazing.
Mary.
So we say,
Yeah.
okay, if you say so. Now, the thing that happened in this particular hadith that Yasir Qadi mentioned was the first time something was removed from the Prophet ﷺ. It wasn't just that his heart was clean, but there was a particular thing next to the heart that was removed. And it was mentioned in the hadith, هذا حظ الشيطان من بني آدم. أو كما قال. This is the a portion of shaitan from Bani Adam. So this is shaitan's portion of you. So we're removing it and getting rid of it. So now you're a wholesome person without, and shaitan doesn't have a piece of, he doesn't have investment in you, basically, for lack of a better term. Was this done with Jesus?
No.
So,
But
so
regardless, just to stay on point though, because I mean, like, yeah, if Jesus wasn't touched by shaitan in the first place, but the Prophet ﷺ had his connection with shaitan cut off, then they're on equal grounds. So that argument they make is ridiculous. But
and the Prophet ﷺ, shaitan submitted, so
right.
that's even greater.
So
It
look,
submitted.
but
Did Jesus?
But
Huh?
actually, if we bring this back to this little conversation, the Prophet
Yeah.
having his connection with Shaitan cut off and his heart cleansed, like you said earlier, you said this a few minutes ago, that usually when someone's traumatized from the death of their loved ones, the problem of evil that atheists would like to bring up. Oh, all my suffering is from God, so no one understands all this trauma I've been through. So this now justifies me going around and murdering a bunch of kids or something. Or like how Anakin's obsession with Padme,
Exactly.
Anakin's obsession with Padme was a driving factor in him killing all the Jedi and stuff. Well, I mean,
And it gives them the right to murder kids.
right. I mean, it was a lot more than that, but still, that was part of it. But the point is that
Yeah.
if your connection with Shaitan is cut off, then Shaitan can come along and say, hey, your mom's dead. You should go and blow up that church or something retarded like that. So that would prepare him for the life of hardship he was going to go through to keep him from becoming a bad person. So this is refuting
Yes.
David Wood, and he's still using it. I don't know why.
2, the Quran repeatedly commands Muslims to show kindness to orphans. Since Muhammad obeyed Allah's commands perfectly and had his heart cleansed of sin, wouldn't he have been compassionate towards orphans without being repeatedly orphaned? Also,
It's not that he would have disobeyed Allah if he wasn't an orphan. Again, he
I don't
keeps
know
constructing
where he
these
got that.
retarded straw men. I don't know how he
That's
does
straw
it.
man. That's the most perfectly constructed straw man I've ever seen in my life.
Dude,
Like,
it's simple.
that's so straw man. You could start a fire with it. I know
It
that's
would be the
corny,
fire.
but
It would be the fire. You would throw it onto a burning house, and then it would just start engulfing the entire neighborhood. Like, that's how bad it is.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? This guy, all the straw mans he's making, probably gonna be the fuel for the fire. He's gonna enter if he doesn't. If he doesn't make tawbah,
He's gonna make
he's gonna like
make a
for,
woodman
yeah. It's
or
like
straw man out of
هذا
wooden
ما
splinters.
هذا ما كنزتم لأنفسكم فذوقوا ما كنتم تكنزون. This is what you saved up for yourselves, so now taste what you know. This guy needs guidance, man. There was a point in time when I first met David Wood, when I first saw this guy, I swear, Allah is my witness, I hated him so much. I wanted to make dua for Jahannam for this guy because of the stuff he was saying.
I mean,
but I
I
never
still
did so.
hate him.
But I
I
also,
wouldn't do that, but I still
yeah,
very
I
much
still hate him.
those.
I still very much hate him. That hasn't changed. It's just I've come to not care a little. It's like the Prophet ﷺ, he used to almost die over people not being misguided and stuff. لَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ
people
أَلَّا
not being
يَكُونُوا
guided?
مُؤْمِنِينَ. Yeah, and then later on, the Prophet ﷺ said, well, they're mushrikeen, so, and it kind of became, well, mine it's kind of like that. Now I'm just like, dude, like you need a lot
Yeah,
of help, because
just
if you die like this,
it's like one of those just please get a life and quit irritating us moments. I mean, look,
yeah,
the argument is so simple. I don't know how his fans just eat up this straw man. This argument is simple, that when you experience pain, you have empathy for people who have that same pain. It's not that if he didn't go through that pain, he wouldn't help people in that same situation. Because there are also people who were disabled, who the Prophet said to take care of them. The Prophet wasn't disabled.
yeah,
He didn't have to go through. He didn't have to be disabled to have empathy for disabled people. So this is retarded.
right, and he had a lot of empathy for disabled people. Some Sahaba were disabled, a good many. But here's the thing. I have a good example of this actually. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. What was it? Darn it! I just forgot the hadith. It was literally a hadith that literally had an example of what we're just saying. But what you're just saying is maybe it'll click back because you were saying something and the hadith came to my mind. I was like, yes, there's.
I was talking about how you don't need to. Allah isn't saying if you don't experience what someone went through, you won't have empathy for them, because He had empathy for people who went through struggles that He didn't actually go through. Not just disabled people whose entire family died. Lots of things. The Prophet didn't go through every type of hardship, but for the hardships that other people went through that He didn't go through, He had empathy for them. Like Bilal radiallahu anh actually suffered far greater by the hands of the Quraysh than he did. Like they tortured this guy day in and day out for weeks.
Well, physically.
Yeah,
he suffered more than the Prophet physically. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, physically, they tortured him, had him bake in the sun and all of that. But he still had empathy for him. He didn't have to be tortured to decide I need to be nice to people who have been tortured. So I don't know how David gets away with murder, man. He connects details that have nothing to do with each other, and people, because they just have a confirmation bias, they want to hate Islam, they just eat it all up.
Yeah. True. Very true.
Fuel for the fire.
If Muhammad was compassionate towards orphans due to his upbringing, and the Quran puts special emphasis on caring for orphans, doesn't the Quran once more seem like it comes from the mind of Muhammad?
Okay. Okay. What was I about to say? The Quran tells you people to be chaste and avoid adultery and fornication. Since the Prophet was chaste and avoided adultery and fornication, doesn't the Quran satisfy his desires? Because something in the Quran happens to align with something he wants, this must mean that he came up with that. Because if he wasn't an orphan, he wouldn't have said to take care of orphans. Again, he's connecting details that have nothing to do with each other.
I mean, a lot of stuff in the Quran were revealed because Umar Khattab and Umar Khattab radiallahu anhu was the one who really wanted it. And then it came in the Quran, even though the Prophet ﷺ was not the one who was like asking for it and everything. So I don't know why he thinks the Quran is like whatever the Prophet ﷺ
I
wants.
mean, look, here's the thing. You gotta. I want to key in on something. We were talking earlier about how Rasulullah SAW had wanted forgiveness for Abu Talib, for his mother, and all that. And Allah says very explicitly, وَمَا كَانَ لِلنَّبِيِّ أَن يَكُونَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, that it is not for the Prophet or the believers to do istighfar for the mushrikeen. He makes this very clear. Now think about it.
Yeah.
What happens in the unseen, no one in the living world is going to know about it. So if, for example, let's say I had a let's say I had a family member who died. I'm a prophet, right? I can say, well, Allah gave me special privileges, so when I ask forgiveness, they're going to be in paradise. None of you can prove me wrong. None of you. So if Allah is rushing to fulfill his desires, right, and the Quran, like David said, must have come from him, then he could have easily said, none of you believers can ask forgiveness for the mushrik, but I gave special permission for the prophet because he's a prophet. But he didn't say that. The thing is, he could have said that, and no one would have been able to prove him wrong, because it's not like anyone can peek through the veil and see the unseen and see if his mother's in paradise or going to paradise. They couldn't see that. So if anything, the Quran disproves what he just said explicitly.
Here again, Yasir Qadi should have argued that Muhammad's upbringing made him cold and ruthless towards orphans, so that the Quran obviously must have come from somewhere else.
So that the prophet would have an immoral upbringing and have to be guided once he became a prophet, as opposed to him having a noble upbringing so that it can gear him into being a prophet, as opposed to saying, I'm a prophet, now I have to be a good person. Or, I was already a good person, now it's time to be a prophet, and put it to the test. Again, David is just basically writing Islam through his own eyes and trying to say, if it doesn't fit this view, then Islam must be false.
3, as we'll see in a future installment, Islam was detrimental to orphans because Islam abolishes adoption. Adopting an orphan into your family is one of the most loving and humane things you can ever do. But Allah and Muhammad abolished this practice so that Muhammad could have the wife of his own adopted son.
Okay, there's so much wrong with that. Because first of all, Islam doesn't abolish adoption of orphans. It just says that they can't inherit your family name or other inheritance. But you can take care of an orphan as a child.
Yes.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I have no, like, when I first, my reaction to this was about as deadpan as yours, because when I heard this, I was like, he didn't even give a source for that. He just said it. But the Quran verse that he's talking about that says that he was allowed to marry Zainab didn't say that adoption had been outlawed now. That's not what it said. And even then,
It's saying adoption doesn't have the same ruling, doesn't carry the same weight as a blood child.
right. And even in that verse, it doesn't say anything about. It doesn't say that this is happening, that adoption is being done away with, so that I can marry someone else. That is again. He does this again, where he takes two details that have nothing to do with each other. He writes his own context around it and tries to connect them to fool everybody into thinking something completely different.
So Allah clearly cares more about Muhammad's sexual gratification than he cares about orphans.
Because having a wife is about sexual gratification. I would expect nothing less from someone who dressed like a woman. Probably just to get sexual gratification.
I mean, come on, dude. Like, Jesus is so free from you, and you're talking about and you're cross-dressing
Deuteronomy
homosexual word.
Deuteronomy says that you are an abomination to the Lord when you do. People who cross-dress are an abomination to the Lord. I'll leave the verse in the description.
He's the best example.
4, Sheikh Qadi radically distorts and misrepresents the impact of orphanhood on childhood development.
Everything he's about to say has nothing to do with this situation.
There are negative impacts on education. As one study reports, the effect of a parent's death on children's education has been found to be severe. Children lose school time even before parents die. Many drop out of school. A higher proportion were too young to understand this negative experience, which unfolds more and more as they grow older, thus plunging them into deeper levels of depression.
Okay, Prophet ﷺ was very well educated and he was intelligent and he knew the Arabic very well despite having lost parents. Look, here's the thing. What he's talking about, that study, is for a child who doesn't have anyone taking care of him. And also because of the post-trauma and depression of losing a loved one. This wouldn't apply to
Which
the
goes to
Prophet.
show that Prophet ﷺ getting his heart clean got rid of
Exactly.
the negative effects, by
Exactly.
the way.
That and the fact that he never didn't have someone taking care of him. He always had someone. Is the trauma, the sadness came from losing people he loved. It's not that he was left alone. So that study doesn't apply. Next try, David.
Orphanhood has a negative impact on IQ. Even though being raised by a foster family helps diminish this impact on girls, it doesn't diminish the impact on boys. IQ tests conducted on children between 4 and 5 years old revealed a difference between girls in foster care and those in an orphanage, but showed no difference in case of boys. Girls in foster care scored an average of 82, while those who remained at the orphanage scored only 70. On the other hand, boys scored an average of 60 regardless of whether they were fostered. The average IQ score in the general population is around 100. Orphanhood has a
Also irrelevant because the Prophet had a great IQ. Like he's
Oh, by the way, IQ tests are so pathetic. They're so
yeah,
fake
really.
and
There's
lame.
not like your
But
IQ is your smartness. Anyway, that's not even what an IQ is.
yeah, their IQ tests are based on the knowledge white people are more known to have. So they base their test on those. So the more you think like a white guy or the more you act like a white person,
Actually,
then which I'm not saying there's a problem with white people or what they're acting like. I'm just saying there's a problem when you make your IQ test, okay,
actually,
specific to a
I'm
particular
reading.
race. Muhammad Hijab mentioned something like this. Muhammad Hijab was like, well, on IQ tests, they don't put how many languages you know because white people 9 times out of 10 only know one language, and every other race 9 times out of 10 knows like a few more languages. They know at least two
Well, look,
languages,
actually,
and they don't.
it's about skills acquired. See, I'm reading this thing on
Yeah,
123best.com, 123test.com. Sorry. What is an IQ? What is intelligence? In science, the term intelligence typically refers to what we could call academic or cognitive intelligence. In their book on intelligence, professors Ressing, I don't know how to pronounce that, answer the question, what is intelligence? Using the following definition: the whole of cognitive or intellectual abilities required to obtain knowledge and to use that knowledge in a good way to solve problems that have a well-described goal and structure.
yes,
Yeah. So like, okay, so what is an IQ? An IQ is an acronym for intelligence quotient. What is an IQ? The IQ is the measurement of your intelligence as is expressed in a number. A person's IQ can be calculated by having the person take an intelligence test. The average IQ is 100. If you achieve a higher score than 100, you are smarter than the average person. And a lower score means that you are somewhat less smart. But yeah, it's about skill acquired. Because like you said,
it's about.
the IQ test lists things that you are good at doing. For example, one of the things it doesn't list is your ability to be multilingual. And the thing is,
Yeah,
though, I'm not multilingual. The Prophet ﷺ wasn't multilingual, but it didn't make a difference because it has nothing to do with how smart you are. When you have those skills, your IQ determines how well you're able to put those skills to work. That's all it is. So,
yep.
I mean, this is like saying being an orphan has a negative impact on your ability to be a construction worker. Like, okay, I can live with that. I did not plan on being one.
negative impact
Okay,
on
as soon as we get to have video, inshallah, I'll have to go and make some videos myself, and then we'll have to continue the rest of the half a little later.
Yeah, I can do that. This is actually just when things
Yeah,
start getting good,
inshallah.
though.
brain development. Parents do a lot more than make sure a child has food and shelter, researchers say. They play a critical role in brain development. More than a decade of research on children raised in institutions shows that neglect is awful for the brain, says Charles Nelson, a professor of pediatrics at Harvard Medical School and Boston Children's Hospital. Without someone who is a reliable source of attention, affection, and stimulation, he says, the wiring of the brain goes awry. The result can be long-term mental and emotional problems.
Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ always had someone taking care of him. And he had Abu Talib.
And didn't have mental and emotional problems.
Look, he's actually proving our point by bringing these studies up, and he doesn't even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
When Nelson first visited the orphanages in 1999, he saw children in cribs rocking back and forth as if they had autism. He also saw toddlers desperate for attention. They'd reach their arms out as though they're saying to you, "Please pick me up," Nelson says. So you'd pick them up and they'd hug you. But then they'd push you away and they'd want to get down. And then the minute they got down, they'd want to be picked up again. It's a very disorganized way of interacting with somebody. The odd behaviors, delayed language, and a range of other symptoms suggested problems with brain development, Nelson says. So he and other researchers began studying the children using a technology known as electroencephalography, EEG, which measures electrical activity in the brain. Many of the orphans had disturbingly low levels of brain activity. Instead of a 100-watt light bulb, it was a 40-watt light bulb, Nelson says. As the children grew older, the researchers were able to use MRI to study the anatomy of their brains. And once again, the results were troubling. We found a dramatic reduction in what's referred to as gray matter and in white matter, Nelson says. In other words, their brains were actually physically smaller. The scientists realized the cause wasn't anything as simple as malnutrition. It was a different kind of deprivation, the lack of a parent or someone who acted like a parent.
And the Prophet had one.
What about the moral characteristics of orphans?
Oh, this is good.
I haven't been able to find any studies suggesting that orphans are more sensitive or compassionate than non-orphans. From personal experience, I can say that my dad was an orphan, and the number of times I ever heard him show any concern for orphans was somewhere in the ballpark of 0.
And I can tell you that I've known orphans who are very compassionate. What's your point? Your personal experience is just as valid as mine.
I also noticed from thousands of conversations with inmates in correctional institutions that almost none of the inmates ever shared stories about their fathers. Many of them shared stories about their mothers, but almost no one shared stories about their fathers. Do you know why that is? Because their fathers weren't around when they were growing up. Shouldn't these young men with missing fathers have become more sensitive and compassionate than young men from two-parent homes?
Well, he didn't say the Prophet was more compassionate because he didn't have a father. He said it was more compassionate because he understood people who went through pain.
They should have, according to the Yasir Qadi theory of child development. Instead, many of them wouldn't think twice about cutting your throat.
Well, they're inmates for a reason, David. They got in jail because they weren't good people most of the time. So I don't know why you'd use them as an example.
Just to be clear.
Again, by the way, the cleansing of his heart got rid of all the negative effects of...
Now, with the Prophet
I mean, he mentioned that, and now he's destroying himself with it every time.
Would the Prophet not think twice about cutting your throat open? No.
Oh,
he was not.
No, I wouldn't.
So I think you've kind of just proven yourself wrong.
Up without a father, or you grow up as an orphan. This doesn't mean that you're going to be less educated or less intelligent or less compassionate than anyone else. You might end up winning multiple Nobel Prizes. There are tons of variables involved. So the point...
Yeah, like having your heart washed and having someone always taking care of you. Yeah.
The point here isn't about...
And being the most influential man in history.
Yeah, and also the environment in which he grew up, which did have some level of decency, unlike the environment we live in today, which is corrupt as crap.
The point is that statistically, looking at large numbers, the impact of orphanhood tends to be negative in several important ways, which means that it's not something you should want to impose on children as part of their upbringing.
Well, God knows everything, so he knows what he's doing is right. So, I mean, look, it's like, okay, if a king of a kingdom was like, okay, I'm going to orphan this kid so he can grow up to be a righteous man. Obviously, you're wrong because you don't know the future and you don't have the right to make that call anyway. So you're oppressing the person. But God knows everything. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's going to do is going to work out.
So in Islam, God orphaned a kid, and in their religion, God killed a bunch of children,
I mean, really,
donkeys, and
yeah.
babies
Hold
and
on.
stuff. So,
Doesn't God know the effects of killing women, children, donkeys, and little girls
by the way,
and vegetation?
by the way, I love the argument that Muslims make, which is so true. I just love it because it gets under the Christian skin. Is that, by the way, Jesus is the one who did this.
Exactly.
He ordered it.
Exactly.
Jesus. By the way.
But Muhammad was orphaned, and Sheikh Qadi believes that Allah was in control of this. So Sheikh Qadi has to see this as positive, and this leads him to present a rosy picture of orphanhood. Once again, however, I have more respect for Allah than the Muslims who believe in him. I say that I have more respect for Allah than Sheikh Qadi does because if we listen to Sheikh Qadi, we have to conclude that Allah is completely ignorant of psychology. But if Allah created human beings and created our brains and wired us
in order
in
to buy into this
specific
argument,
ways, then Allah
you have to believe that Allah is ignorant of the future. And unlike your God, our God isn't. So he knew what he was doing from the very beginning.
must know what he's doing. He must know the
Wait, we were
impact
watching
of
part
taking away
two?
a child's.
Huh?
We're watching part 2 or part 1?
No, this is part one. He basically just talked about the effect of not having a father. Part two he's not really saying anything here that he didn't say there much. Part two is really just where you need to begin. And part three, oh my God. We'll have to get to that on another day, but part three is something.
But Muhammad was orphaned, and Sheikh Qadi took control of this. So Sheikh Qadi has to see this as positive, and this leads him to present a rosy picture.
Is that me?
of orphanhood.
Am I doing
He
that?
just said Boss Man did it.
Oh,
Because
sorry.
if we listen to Sheikh Qadi, we have
I
to
don't forgive
conclude
you.
that Allah is
You have to kill yourself.
completely ignorant
No, actually, never mind. I'll do that. I'll do that. Never mind. It's fine.
of
Yeah, you-
psychology.
Exactly.
But if Allah created human beings and created our brains and wired us in specific ways, then Allah must know what he's doing.
David is assuming that everyone works the same. Now, even if he said earlier that by and large these bad things happen to orphans. Okay, that's by and large. So why are you trying to force the idea that a Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, isn't some kind of exception? Of course, he's going to explain why.
Yeah.
It's going to be quite dumb.
He must know the impact of taking away a child's father, then taking away his foster family, then taking away his mother, then taking away his grandfather. Allah knows
And then leaving him with a super awesome, loving uncle.
what this will do to a child, and we know what.
Hold on a minute. Okay, just as much as he knows the effects of taking away your father and stuff, is just as much he is capable of making sure those effects don't happen.
Exactly. Again, we keep having to come back to this, the whole washing of the heart, which would keep you from becoming a sociopath or a psycho because you lost loved ones.
What this will do to a child, which means that we can know Allah's true intentions. Sheikh Qadi believes that Muhammad's trials during childhood shaped his character.
So by putting the Prophet ﷺ through such difficult circumstances, this made him who he was. And he needed to be that man in order to be the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So, from an Islamic perspective, what did Allah want Muhammad to become? Makes no sense to say that Allah orphaned Muhammad repeatedly in order to make him more sensitive, since being repeatedly orphaned doesn't make you more sensitive. But as we discussed in part 1, we do know the impact of losing a father or father figure at a young age. Based on the psychology of the defective father, we were able to predict that someone with Muhammad's childhood experiences would rebel against authority and tradition, would have a problem with father figures, and especially with viewing God as a heavenly father, and would have some difficulty forming normal relationships with other people.
Okay, that whole viewing God as a heavenly father thing, it's just about as dumb as it sounds, but the part 3 is all about that. Believe
If
me.
statistically
You're
these
gonna wanna
tend to
see
be
it.
the result of losing a father or father figure at a young age, wouldn't Allah know this? And if Allah knew this, can't we say that Allah's intention was to shape Muhammad into someone with these characteristics in order to promote Islam?
No.
Unlike Sheikh Qadi, we're going to test our claims, and for the remainder of this discussion, we'll see if our hypothesis about Muhammad rebelling against authority and tradition is confirmed or disconfirmed.
All right, this is where
Let's start with a couple of passages from the history of
as my brother Anakin Skywalker would once say, this is where the fun begins.
Tabari. The History of Tabari, Volume 6, beginning on page 93. The messenger of God proclaimed God's message openly and declared Islam publicly to his fellow tribesmen. When he did so, they did not withdraw from him or reject him in any way, as far as I have heard, until he spoke of their gods and denounced them. When he did this, they took exception to it and united in opposition and hostility to him, except for those of them whom God had protected from error by means of Islam. Notice, when Muhammad preached Islam, they did not withdraw from him or reject him in any way until he spoke of their gods and denounced them. So the Quraysh had no problem with Muhammad preaching Islam. They only objected to him denouncing their gods. What did they do about it? They went to his
Which
uncle,
is a part
Abu
of
Talib,
Islam.
and said,
I was supposed to say that. It's like the Romans didn't have any problem with the Judeo-Christians preaching Christianity. They only had a problem when they said that Jesus was the Messiah. Like, that's
It's
kind of a
dude, like, that's
it's
why.
No, look,
You know
here's
how
what's
evil
dumber.
this-
Here's what's dumber though, is that the Quraysh believed in Allah. So the whole, they didn't have a problem with him saying believe in Allah. Yeah, that's because they already believed in Allah. Their problem came when he said denounce the other gods because they worship them. And the Rasulullah was not about to have them worshiping false gods. Obviously, they didn't have a problem with him preaching at first because he didn't say anything they didn't already believe in. The problem came when he said something they didn't believe in. It wasn't because they're like,
Yes.
okay, you have your religion, I have mine, because to them it was the same thing until he said something that went against it.
Yeah, and I don't know why. You know, this proves how evil this guy is. Why you choose the side of
Actually, yeah, I was actually about to say that.
pagan,
It's quite,
pagans over monotheists?
like, it doesn't matter how much you hate him. You can't do this. I was actually about to say that. It's like, this guy is the anti-Islamic equivalent to a Nazi sympathizer. He's seriously, unironically going to sit up here and say the Meccans didn't do nothing. Meccans didn't do nothing wrong.
Yes.
And he's not even, he's unironically saying this. He actually means it. That's what's so sick.
Talib, your nephew, has reviled our gods, denounced our religion, derided our traditional values, and told us that our forefathers were misguided. Either curb his attacks on us or give us a free hand to deal with him. For you
They wanted to kill him, by the way. Just saying.
are just as opposed to him as we are, and we will deal with him for you.
You know, a lot of these incidents and their attempts to kill him and the clarification of what was said here was explained in Yasir Qadi's lectures, but of course David Wood doesn't want to show that because he's honest.
Abu Talib gave them a mild answer and declined courteously, and they left him. The messenger of God continued as before, proclaiming the faith of God and summoning people to it. After a while, they complained again. Abu Talib, you are our elder and our chief, so give us justice against your nephew and order him to desist from reviling our gods, and we will leave him to his God. Here again, they have no problem with Muhammad preaching his view of God. They object to Muhammad reviling their gods.
And their view of reviling is simply to reject it. That's it. It's like you have you had a falling out with a friend, right? And he says, this guy was so mean to me, he reviled me, he insulted me, and all that. You're literally only trying to figure out what happened, the truth of the matter from his perspective. But then when you actually sit them down and figure out what happened, it's like, okay, so how did he revile you? He said my rice was undercooked. That really hurt my feelings. I'm like, okay, but he didn't. So he didn't actually revile you. He didn't do. He didn't overstep his bounds. That's what's happening here. They are saying
blaspheme against.
yeah. They're saying that the prophet overstepped his bounds and reviled their gods, when in reality, all he did was say, stop worshiping them because Allah is the only true God. That they saw that as blasphemy. That's it. That was their view. Instead of trying to say, this is what happened, this is the only thing that happened during the Meccan period, by quoting their perspective, just a few lines from their perspective, because there's a lot more written on the subject, why don't you actually look at the facts, which are the reports of what actually happened? If you look at the reports of what actually happened, they never reviled their gods. Unless, of course, the pagans insulted Allah first, and then they responded by reviling their gods.
I mean, it's not even a matter, really, of the process of saying something bad about their gods or not. So it comes in the Quran. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. When La ilaha illallah is said to them, they become arrogant.
Right.
They say, and another place, I think in the same surah, another place, it's mentioned, أَجَعَلَ الْآلِهَةَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا إِنَّ هَذَا لَشَيْءٌ عُجَابٌ. They said, did he make all of our gods into one God? This is a bad thing. So because the Prophet said worship one God already, they had a particular problem with it. Actually, what they're really talking about when they say the Prophet was preaching Islam and they had no problem, is when the Prophet was not talking about God at all. When he was just saying, take care of the orphan, be nice to your neighbor, help out the poor,
Don't bury little
give
girls alive.
charity. Yes, when the Prophet was saying that, well, not the whole girls, they're like, nah, we want to bury them. But when the Prophet was saying those kind of stuff, they were like, yeah, sure. Which non-Muslims, by the way, they do the same thing today. If you say all of the rulings about Islam, like be nice, do this, do that, be kind to your neighbor, they say, yes, that's humanity. I love that. And then when you talk about God and say only Allah has the right to be worshipped, they have a problem with that, and they don't really want to talk to you anymore about that. They don't really care about your theology. They just want to know what God told you to do, because they seem to agree with certain things like that. As soon as the Prophet ﷺ said La ilaha illallah, which is the foundation of our religion, Allah says, yastakbirun, they became arrogant. And they said, oh, you're making all of our gods into one God. We can only worship one God. This is the reviling, by the way, that these guys are talking about.
Yes. So the thing is, what he doesn't understand is that these statements from the Quraysh, they're paraphrases. If you want to know what actually happened, you have to go into the details of the story. He's just taking these snippets, these paraphrases, and he's drawing his own context around it to say, the Meccans were just trying to get him to stop being so rebellious. That's all it was. You're such a liar. Anyone can just Google this. Anyone. And anyone who was watching Yasir Qadi's lectures will know that you are wrong.
And their only request is that he stop reviling their gods. The tension builds, and in another passage beginning on page 101, a Muslim asks a Muslim from Mecca about the worst attack by the Quraysh on Muhammad. This is the worst attack on Muhammad. I said to him, what was the worst attack you saw by Quraysh upon the Messenger of God when they openly showed their enmity to him? He replied, I was with them when their nobles assembled one day in the Hijr and discussed the Messenger of God. They said, we have never seen the like of what we have endured from this man. He has derided our traditional values, abused our forefathers, reviled our religion, caused division among us, and insulted our gods. Does that sound like rebellion against authority and tradition? We have endured a great...
You know, if he really wanted to rebel, if this was all about rebellion, because I know where he's going with this, if this is all about rebellion against authority and tradition, then he wouldn't have said worship Allah alone. He would have just said stop worshiping all these gods. There is no God, or something like that. Or he probably would have said don't take care of the needy or the poor, or just anything that goes against what they want. Why would he say worship this one God and leave the others alone? Unless he actually wanted that God to be worshipped. You know what this is? You know how one common argument that the Muslims bring, and to my knowledge, I've never seen an atheist or a Christian bring a good argument against this, which is that Rasulullah ﷺ didn't have any worldly motivations for preaching Islam. He was promised money, he rejected it. He was promised women, he rejected it. He was promised power and authority, he rejected it. He just simply wanted to preach that there was no God but Allah. And and he lived a life of poverty. Despite having so much money given to him, he was constantly giving it to people who needed it. So now, if he was really out for some kind of worldly benefit, then why would he reject all his worldly benefit? So now, David realizes he can't do anything against this argument. So he has to come up with a new theory. His theory is he was doing it because he was trying to rebel. And now, okay, so if we go with that theory, then we now have a second problem. If he was trying to rebel, then what was the deal with worshiping Allah alone? Why did he say that? That had nothing to do with rebelling. He could have just said, don't worship any of them. He could have just said, free yourself from gods, free yourself from the shackles of religion and become an atheist or something weird like that. He didn't have to say worship this one specific God. In fact, it didn't even have to be that one God. It could have been a few gods.
Great deal from him, or words to that effect. While they were saying this, the messenger of God suddenly appeared and walked up and kissed the black stone. Then he passed by them while performing the circumambulation, and as he did so, they made some slanderous remarks about him. I could see from the messenger of God's face that he had heard them, but he went on. When he passed the second time, they made similar remarks, and I could see from his face that he had heard them, but again he went on. Then he passed them the third time, and they made similar remarks, but this time he stopped and said, "Hear, men of Quraysh, by him in whose hand Muhammad's soul rests, I have brought you slaughter." Muhammad promises to slaughter his own tribe. They were gripped by what he had said, and it was as though every man of them had a bird perched on his head. Even those of them who had been urging the severest measures against him previously spoke in a conciliatory way to him, using the politest expressions they could think of, and said,
"The severest way?" Yeah. They spoke to him in a severe way.
"Depart in true guidance, Abu al-Qasim. By God, you are never ignorant." The Prophet left, and the next day they gathered in the Hijr, and I was again present. They said to one another, "You were talking about the unpleasantness which you have endured and the things which Muhammad has done to you, but when he openly said something disagreeable, you shrank from him." While they were saying this, the messenger of God suddenly appeared, and they leapt upon him as one man and surrounded him, saying, "Is it you who says this and that?" repeating what they had heard of his denunciation of their gods and their religion. The Prophet said, "Yes, I am the one who says that." So he admits to reviling their gods and their religion. Then I saw one of them grabbing his cloak, but Abu Bakr stood in front of him, weeping and saying, "Woe upon you all! Would you kill a man because he says, 'My Lord is God'?" Then they left him, and that is the worst thing I ever saw Quraysh do to him.
Keep in mind, that's the worst thing he ever saw. That doesn't mean that's the worst thing that ever happened.
Exactly. Exactly.
This guy, I've never seen anyone read our text with such retardation running through his head. It's so clear, it's so concise, but he tries to find some way to make it fit his narrative.
Think about this. The text says over and over again that the Quraysh had no problem with Muhammad believing in Allah alone and preaching Islam. They had a problem with Muhammad.
We're just going to skip all of the persecution, torture, and killing that they did to the Muslims, like what they did to Sumayya and her husband and her son, and what they did to Bilal, what they did to so many others. Yeah. We're just going to skip all of that and say they just didn't like him saying, that our gods suck. That's it.
Insulting their
he
gods.
Just told them their rice wasn't that good.
Yeah, or your rice was a little too hard.
Their religion, abusing their forefathers, and causing division. Muhammad did this for years, and they kept going to his uncle, asking Abu Talib to convince him to stop talking about their gods. In response, Muhammad promised to slaughter them. We just read it, not making this up.
Yeah, you're just misrepresenting it.
One of them grabbed his cloak, and Abu Bakr screamed, "Are you going to kill a man simply for believing in Allah?" Have you noticed that Islam often causes its adherents to interpret any objections to Islamic practices as simple objections to belief in Allah? Hey, I have a problem with marrying 6-year-old girls and female genital mutilation and raping female captives and violently subjugating non-Muslims and terrorist attacks in general.
Okay. If you have a problem with 6-year-old girls, you have a problem with your Bible. If you have a problem with female genital mutilation, fine, we don't accept it. You have a problem with raping sex
And you have a
slaves.
problem with your Bible.
Yeah, if you have a problem with raping sex slaves, fine, we don't allow that either. We also don't have a
Then you have a problem with the Bible.
yeah. You have a problem with what's the other thing? Oh yeah, violently subjugating non-believers. Again, we're good. We don't believe in that either. And terrorist attacks in general. Again, something we're not in line with. So yeah, thanks. I guess we can be friends, David.
Why is David Wood persecuting
Maybe.
us simply for believing in Allah?
We don't do this.
So, did Muhammad rebel against authority and tradition? Yes, the only exceptions were that he continued certain pagan practices, such as circling the Kaaba and kissing the black stone.
Just because pagans did it, it must be a pagan practice. You know what's a pagan practice? Human sacrifice to appease the wrath of God. That's about as pagan as it gets.
Yes.
And that is the center
Yes.
of your creed. Even the people who don't believe in the
Exactly.
Trinity have to believe in that. Unbelievable. Look,
By the way, since the Prophet brought them slaughter, what happened in Fatih Mecca again? Fatih Mecca. What happened during Fatih Mecca? When the Prophet came with an army of 10,000, marched on Mecca. What
victory over Mecca. He gave mercy to everyone.
did he bring slaughter?
No, he did not.
But I thought he brought.
Of course, David Wood is aware of that, though. Of course. But hang on, I was about to go somewhere on that. Oh yeah, so human sacrifice is about to appease the wrath of God, and not only human sacrifice, but it has to be a pure sacrifice, an unblemished, virgin, chaste, sinless sacrifice. That's about as pagan as it gets. But going back,
Yes.
when these people say he kissed the black stone, the pagans did that. They circled the Kaaba, the pagans did that. I'm like, this is just so surface level. That's like the pagans wore clothes, the Muslims wear clothes, the pagans had beards, the Muslims have beards, the pagans married women, the Muslims married women. It is so retarded. I don't care that the pagans used to do that.
The other thing is that circling the Kaaba predates the pagans. Ibrahim was the one who built the Kaaba.
Of course, he would just say that we're making that up, but I don't care. I mean, I got to find the references, but there are plenty of references to the Jews having to circle holy areas in the Bible. Yeah, but of course, Christians will love retconning their ideas onto the Old Testament so that they can say, the Bible doesn't say that, the Muslims say that, and that's why Islam is the problem. So that they can hypocritically hide the truth of their own book from the world, just so they can have an excuse to insult us, when in reality their book justifies the exact same thing. They have a habit of doing that. Just like what we saw Pastor Anderson doing by saying the Bible doesn't allow you to marry women who right when they've reached puberty. They must be of a mature age. Then he tried to pull up a verse that supported that. It didn't support that, and he ended up not reading it to everybody. It was so beautiful.
But only because he could incorporate these pagan practices into his rebellion.
Yeah, because kissing the stone is part of rebellion. Like, how dare he kiss the stone without our permission? I guess. This guy is just grasping at straws now.
But Muhammad wasn't satisfied with rebelling against authority and tradition. He also encouraged others to rebel against authority and tradition, unless the authority and tradition came from him. Of course, any prophet might say to his listeners, don't just believe what your parents believed, you need to put God first. But with Muhammad, this rises to the level of obsession, and the main obstacle to Islam turns out to be people trusting their fathers.
Okay, this, I think what you're about to see, this is like the cherry on top. This is so bad.
Surah 2, verse 170. When it is said to them, the unbelievers, follow what Allah has sent down, they say, nay, we shall follow what we found our fathers following. What? Even though their fathers did not understand anything, nor were they guided? Surah 5, verse...
Somehow he's gonna take all these verses, he's going to take all of them and conclude that the Prophet ﷺ is against fatherhood, even though the verses clearly say that these that the fathers were on falsehood, therefore deny them. Not why follow your fathers because they're your fathers. That's not what they say at all. This is
Exactly.
You know what this reminds me of?
They do whatever they want, but in reality, if I tell him my father was Muslim and therefore I'm Muslim, he'd be angry at that.
I mean, really, like, here's the thing: Prophet ﷺ was a father, so why would he tell people not to listen to their fathers?
Exactly.
That's kind of dumb. Remember that thing, that annoying joke David Wood kept making in that video, where you tried to say the Bible, the Quran affirms the Bible. He kept saying Muslims do the whole miracle of reinterpretation thing. As you go back through a lot of his old videos, you find that he relies on the miracle of reinterpretation, and he's doing it right now. He doesn't have enough self-awareness to see when he's doing it, but he always wants to point out when someone else does it, even though we're not actually doing it.
104. And when it is said to them, come to what Allah has revealed, and unto the messenger Muhammad, they say, enough for us is that which we found our fathers following, even though their fathers had no knowledge whatsoever and no guidance.
And if the fathers had knowledge and guidance, then it would be okay to follow them. That's what the verse is implying.
Yeah.
Surah 7, verse 28. And when they commit an indecency, they say, we found our fathers doing this, and Allah has enjoined it on us. Say, surely Allah does not enjoin indecency. Do you say against Allah what you do not know? Surah 9, verse 23. O you who believe, do not take your fathers and your brothers for guardians if they love unbelief more than belief. And whoever...
So clearly this verse is proving that it's about Iman, not about the ties of kith and kin. It's about making sure that whoever you have ties with prefers Iman over disbelief. That's it.
I like how he underlines your father, but he doesn't underline your brothers.
Oh yeah, because I mean that part right there proves that this isn't about fathers specifically. It's just about family.
Yeah, because that means he's looking for fathers, but he's not. It has nothing to do with the actual narrative, because the narrative mentions brothers too. Why doesn't he put that in? Why isn't that a part of his argument?
As a matter of fact, the next verse that comes right after this lists a whole bunch of different family members.
Yes, exactly.
So, but of course, he doesn't want us to see that.
إن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وإخوانكم وأزواجكم
وعشيرتكم وأموال.
Exactly. Even your money. Why doesn't he add all that too?
Want some war on money? That's why he was a poor man, because he didn't like money, because he was an orphan.
of you takes them for a guardian, these it is that are unjust. Surah 11, verse 109. So be not in doubt, O Muhammad, as to what these men worship. They worship nothing but what their fathers worshipped before them. And verily, we shall repay them in...
Another thing to point out here is that the father is the head of the household, so it's not going to say they worship what their mothers worship before them. I mean, which, of course, it would include mothers, but since their fathers are the ones in charge, then it's going to say they do what their fathers did, their forefathers.
Well, everyone knows that.
The Bible uses language like this all the time. It's not to say, it's not because it's talking about the man specifically, it's just talking about generations before and after.
Exactly.
Full their portion without diminution. Surah 31, verse 21. When they are told to follow the revelation that Allah has sent down, they say, nay, we shall follow the ways that we found our fathers following.
Which proves that they want what their fathers did over the revelation, which is more important than what their fathers did.
What? Even if it is Satan beckoning them to the penalty of the blazing fire?
Satan?
Surah 34, verse 43. And when our clear verses are recited to them, they say, this Muhammad is only a man who wishes to hinder you from that which your fathers used to worship. This message.
Notice how it's not what their fathers, typically it's not what their fathers used to do, like don't give charity or don't take care of the orphans. It's just don't worship what they worshipped.
About not trusting fathers was the message of all prophets according to the Quran.
About not trusting fathers.
Surah 43, verses 21 through 24. Or have we given...
This is next level mental gymnastics. He is taking verses. Okay, this is what he does. Premise 1. Islam says not to trust fathers because the Prophet of Islam was orphaned and so he had father issues. So, premise 2, I'm going to bring evidence to support that. The Quran says, don't trust bad fathers who lead you on the wrong path. Conclusion, he doesn't trust fathers at all. How?
He didn't even know. He didn't even father.
You say what?
He didn't even know his father. He never met his father.
He
Why?
couldn't hate his dad. He didn't know him. And honestly, I have to ask David Wood an honest question here. Which is more psychologically damaging? To grow up having not known your father, or to grow up knowing your father, realize that he didn't do anything wrong to you, and still decide to drill a hammer through his head? I think that has a bit more damage. I mean, you said it yourself that you couldn't think of a single wrong thing he ever did to you, and you still decided
And they tried to murder him.
Oh, actually, he said in that video that he was still alive, somehow. I guess he wasn't that strong. Must have been a toy hammer or something. I don't know.
Look before it. So
Well, hold on a minute. What was the point of that story? What is? I need to hear more about that story.
It's his testimony of how he became a Christian. He said a lot in there. The whole hammer to his dad's head thing was just one part of it. But he said a lot.
Wow.
You gotta watch the whole thing. It's quite the roller coaster.
As to it, nay, they say, we found our fathers on a course, and surely we are guided by their footsteps. And thus we did not send before you any warner in a town, but those who led easy lives in it said, surely we found our fathers on a course, and surely we are followers of their footsteps.
You know how he's trying to say that the Quran says the message of the prophets is to not trust fathers. But what these verses are actually saying is every person that came before you had their people say, we're not going to believe in the truth because our fathers told us otherwise. This isn't don't trust fathers. This is the people want to reject us because they're stuck on tradition. And the prophets never said don't trust fathers. None of these verses say that. Not a single one of these verses say that.
The warner said, what? Even if I bring you a better guide than that on which you found your fathers? They said, surely we are unbelievers in that with which you are sent.
You know, I just thought of something. If the Prophet ﷺ had such father issues, then why did he love his uncle Abdul Muttalib and Abu Talib so much? Why did he get along with him and love him so much if he had an issue with father figures? He had a father figure and he loved him. He didn't have a problem with him.
I'm surprised this guy hasn't used Ibrahim yet. Are they start loving some prophet?
Oh, he's gonna do that.
Also,
Don't give him time.
Notice, Allah never sent a prophet who didn't tell people not to trust their fathers.
It didn't say that. It didn't say that. It said he didn't send a prophet where the people said, we're going to follow our fathers over you. They're not saying what you're saying, they're saying.
And the Quran gives us numerous examples of these former prophets. We read about the Prophet Hud's discussion with unbelievers in Surah 7, verses 70 to 71. They said, have you come to us that we may serve Allah alone and give up what our fathers used to serve? Then bring to us what you threaten us with, if you are the truthful ones.
That actually goes back to the verse you brought up earlier, when you say, La ilaha illallahu yastakbirun. When the moment you start saying there's only one God, they get arrogant. And that's exactly what's happening here. They're all like, okay, if what you're saying is true, then bring us that punishment you promise us. That's what they have to say with that. This is actually proof of what we've been saying.
He said, indeed, uncleanness and wrath from your Lord have lighted upon you. What? Do you dispute with me about names which you and your fathers have given? Allah has not sent any authority for them. Wait then. I too, with you, will be of those who wait. When the Prophet Saleh preaches to the people of Thamud, they reply in Surah 11, verse 62, O Saleh, surely you are one amongst us in whom great expectations were placed before this. Do you now forbid us from worshipping what our fathers worshipped? Abraham speaks to his people in Surah 21. We read in verses 52 to 54, when he said to his father and his people, what are these images to which you are devoted? They said, we found...
Notice it also said to his people, not just his father.
...our fathers worshipping them. He said, indeed, you and your fathers have been in manifest error. We find a similar passage in Surah 26, verses 70 to 76.
He's ignoring the fact that all of these are giving a reason. It's just saying, oh no,
Yep.
it's not saying truly your fathers have been manifest fathers. It's like, no, your fathers have been in manifest error. There's a big difference.
He, Abraham, said to his father and his people, "What do you worship?" They said, "We worship idols, and to them we are ever devoted." He said, "Do they hear you when you call, or do they profit you or cause you harm?" They said, "Nay, but we found our fathers doing so." He said,
You know, it's almost like David wants to make it sound like that's a bad thing. Hey, these idols don't benefit you. These idols are bad for you to worship. Oh yeah, but you know what Allah's rebuttal to that is? We found our fathers doing it. Like that's somehow a bad thing. No, that's a very bad thing. You're supposed to be against idolatry, David. I know you're a Christian, but you're supposed to be against this. You should be in support of what's being said here. But you're trying to make it sound like, with their reputation saying, we found our fathers doing it, is somehow a good thing.
Yes, I don't. Nothing makes me more amazed at the fact that this guy's on their side. Why are you choosing their side? Dude, come on.
Like,
Man.
it's like I told you, it's like the anti-Islamic equivalent to a Nazi sympathizer. He knows that the Meccans are wrong. The Quraysh were wrong, 110%, no doubt about it. But because he hates Islam so much, he's got to try to find some way to spin it in his favor. His heart is hardened.
"Have you then considered what you have been worshiping, you and your fathers before you?" In Surah 12, verse 40, Joseph says to his fellow prisoners in Egypt, "If not him, you worship nothing but names which you have named, you and your fathers, for which Allah has sent down no authority."
And if he did send down authority, then it'd be okay.
In Surah 11, verse 87, the Midianites respond to the prophet Shu'aib, presumably Jethro, "O Shu'aib, does your prayer enjoin you that we should forsake what our fathers worshipped, or that we should not do what we please with regard to our property?" In Surah 10, verse 78, Pharaoh and his chiefs reply to Moses, "Have you come to turn us away from the ways we found our fathers following, in order that you and your brother may have greatness in the land?" In Surah 14, verse 10, Moses tells the Jews about the message of the prophets before him. Their messengers said, "Is there doubt about Allah, the maker of the heavens and the earth? He invites you to forgive you your faults and to respite you till an appointed term." They said, "You are nothing but mortals like us. You wish to turn us away from what our fathers used to worship. Bring us, therefore, some clear authority." The main task of all prophets, according to Muhammad, the orphan with a psychological need to rebel against authority and tradition, seems to be convincing people not to listen to their fathers. This is interesting because the vast majority of Muslims only believe in Islam because it's what their parents taught them.
Okay.
What? And the vast majority of Christians.
Okay. I'll be fair here. If you're referring to Muslims who are born into Islam, then yeah, because most Muslims are born into Islam, then yeah. But for Muslims who choose willingly to come into Islam, then no, that would not apply to that. Because most Muslims who come into Islam didn't have some type of Islamic influence from their parents, and it was like, I saw my dad on this, so I decided to join. No, they joined with their own free will. But I mean, look, it's not even fair though, because people who are born into Islam, obviously they're gonna become Muslim because of their parents' influence. So it's not even fair to judge them for that. They didn't have a choice in the matter. They were born into an Islamic household.
And then they chose that they were going to remain Muslim, and that's going to be their lifestyle by their own choice. Because a lot of Muslims have turned away from Islam after growing up.
Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Hadith 1900. Abu Dhar reported the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "The father is the middle of the gates of paradise, so keep to this gate or lose it." That's the message of our prophets in regards to fathers.
You know what? Here's another hadith. A man, his dad took some money from him. A Sahabi, his dad took some money from him. So the man was like, "Oh, that's my money. Like, my dad is taking everything I worked with. I put all my work and my savings, and my dad just took it and used it." So he went to the Prophet to complain, and the Prophet called the dad and said, "Did this happen?" The dad said, "Yes." but I only took his money because I need to take care of his young sisters, and I'm too old to work myself. And he's a young man now, so I took from his money to take care of his young children, sisters, and to take care of myself. And I'm too old to even work anymore. And the Prophet ﷺ told the man, "You and your money belongs to your father."
It seems like the message
Authentic.
of
He literally
Islam.
said that.
The message of
That's
Islam.
crazy.
Dude, that's what I say. Like, when David has to come to these retarded conclusions, he has to ignore evidences or just twist the few evidences he actually uses. Because, look, anyone with half a brain, unfortunately, none of his fans in the comment section seem to have half a brain, but anyone with half a brain who looks at this are going to say, none of those Quran verses support the idea of rebelling against fathers. It seems to be all about rebelling against falsehood. Because all of them put a condition on why you shouldn't listen to your father. That's what it says.
Regardless of where it comes from.
Because keep in mind also that you should rebel against, because our hadith traditions say oftentimes you don't listen to your parents if they tell you to do something that goes against what Allah wants. Like, for example, if they told you you can or to go out into a nightclub or to drink some alcohol or something like that, you don't listen to them. You absolutely don't listen to them, even if it's your mother. So this is not about fathers.
قل يا نصارى يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين شهداء لله كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما. Allah SWT is basically saying, you guys should stick up for the truth, and you should stand by the truth, and you should accept the truth, regardless of whether it's against your parents, or it's someone close to you. So it doesn't matter who is doing the falsehood.
And then this along comes this guy and saying, we're trying to rebel against everybody. Anyone who's close to you, the Quran says to cut ties with it. Because this guy, like, you know some of the qualities I've noticed about someone who has a hardened heart? When someone's heart is hardened, you can give them the most sound, reasonable, logical explanation, and they will try and find some way to twist it in their favor. Like, I was talking to this Christian one time in the comment section. This was a few weeks ago, actually. And he brought this hadith when the Prophet ﷺ said that it's okay to, when you make an oath, to expiate that oath if it goes against something that is good or better. Like, let's say I make an oath not to give you sadaqah because I need it right now. I need my money to take care of my family. Then I come into a lot more money. It was like, okay, so I don't have to stick by that oath. I can give you money. That's just a rough example, you know. It seems pretty straightforward. You have to stick to your word, but if your word is going against something good or better, then don't stick to it. Go with what is the greater good. Very simple to understand. He tried to understand this as your word means nothing. Break it if you want to. It doesn't matter. You can swear on something today and break it tomorrow. It won't make a difference because you can just decide. He said you can just decide based on your own opinion that something is better than what you swore to. Like, the text doesn't say that at all. You're just making that up. And we went back and forth with that for a while, and eventually he just gave up. He didn't reply back. But yeah, when someone's heart is hardened, it doesn't matter how reasonable you sound, they'll try to find some way to twist the facts in their favor. And that's exactly what he's doing right now. None of the verses he brought up support what he's saying. And every hadith we just brought up refutes what he... We don't even have to bring them because the verse... It's not like he took a verse and misunderstood it. He just made a bogus, retarded explanation from them. All the verses say, don't follow your fathers if they're on falsehood. His conclusion is, don't follow your fathers. So we don't even have to bring a hadith to refute this. We could just say you're wrong.
Exactly. Don't follow your fathers. Don't follow your fathers if they're doing something wrong or they're being stupid. He's saying, hate your fathers, go against your fathers, don't respect your fathers. I'm like, dude, are you serious?
This is not even... We didn't have to bring in those hadith. We did anyway. We don't have to. And so, yeah, that's it.
Nevertheless, convincing people to rebel against their parents and culture usually doesn't go over too well. So, not surprisingly, Muhammad had to flee Mecca.
That is not... Oh, Lord. This is that's what I'm talking about, man. This is Nazi sympathizer level propaganda. He has got to leave out so many facts. The fact that Muslims are being persecuted, they had to sneak out in groups. He's not like they were like, okay, we can't take you anymore, son. Get out of town, go somewhere else. They didn't want them to leave. They wanted to keep them there and persecute them. Remember the boycott?
And kill them.
You remember the boycott, David?
Exactly.
Did you hear about that when you were listening to Yasir Qadi talk in those lectures? Or you don't want us to know about that, huh?
The Meccans couldn't have been happier. Once he was gone, they could go on practicing their religion and traditions. Muhammad
That's not
was
true.
It's not even remotely true. First of all, they tried to kill him before he left. They tried, even when they found out he was gone, they went after him to try and kill him. They failed.
Exactly.
safe hundreds of miles away in Medina. He and his followers could work and worship Allah and learn the Quran in peace. But Muhammad didn't want to live in peace, so he started robbing the Meccan caravans.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, dude.
This
Okay,
is,
you know what?
okay.
I said I was gonna end that half. I said I was gonna end that half video. I'm gonna end now because of that statement. I'm done.
Real quick,
I'll finish.
we gotta get some closing remarks, but I gotta ask, what would you compare this to in terms of dishonest propaganda? Like,
This is just
anything comes to mind?
What you know what comes to my mind? You know, when this guy does what he does, I just see a ballerina spinning, because the guy is spinning everything he can find in Islam faster and better than a ballerina can spin. This guy is like everything. Oh, the Prophet was stealing from the Meccans. That's just lying. Like, why are you spinning that? Like, that's just not true.
I mean,
There's
like,
clear history behind it.
he's got to take one or two facts and add his own details to it. Like, the Prophet had slaves, therefore he raped them. The Prophet
Yes.
had a child bride, therefore he abused her. The Prophet didn't agree with the Meccans, therefore he rebelled against the Meccans, and that's why he was kicked out.
And he reviled them. The Prophet
Right. The Prophet
didn't have a father, therefore he hated them.
went from Mecca to Medina. Therefore, he was kicked out of Mecca to Medina because the elders didn't like him anymore. He takes these tiny little details and he writes his own theater around them, and everyone just buys into it.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
disgustingly dishonest. I'm gonna go on a whim, and I think I can actually say this because I've seen a lot of this guy's content. I'm gonna go out on a whim and say that this is the worst David Wood video I've ever seen.
It is. It literally is. It's the worst.
Although,
I mean,
part
it's
three
not
is
the
probably
worst.
gonna
It's
outdo
not. It's not the worst in terms of the kind of insult, the kind of evil things he says in terms of insult. It's the worst in terms of just the sheer propaganda, the amount of straw and hay that is around him right now because of all the straw man dummies that he was building.
Yeah.
It's so much right now, more than anything I've ever seen in my life. And so it's the most dishonest video, the video full of the most propaganda, lies, and so much straw. He needs a horse to eat that stuff up. He has made other videos worse in the sense of
his horses are his fans.
this.
By the way.
Yeah, exactly. They're his fans. They're the ones eating all the straw mans up. And so he needs every other day he needs to pump out another video full of straw mans
I mean, really,
for them to be fed
honest with
properly.
you, covering David Wood is a jihad of its own, because just when you think, okay, we're gonna get people together, we don't even need research because most of his videos are just so bad that they just require a functioning brain to deal with, and then we're just gonna get together, take care of a video or two, and move on with our lives. You go through this guy's channel, there are hundreds of turds like this one, and the moment you deal with one of them, you find that there are 5 others from around the same time period that this one was uploaded. Then you find after a day or two has passed, he's uploaded 5 more. It's like this guy is just spamming anti-Islamic nonsense. You can't. It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, because he needs his horses gotta eat.
His horses gotta eat, man.
This guy's so
And
retarded.
unfortunately, his horses won't eat anything but straw.
Yeah, that's all they want. They won't eat apples, no carrots. They're very unhealthy horses.
Yo.
Okay.
Before we go,
Well,
you want to give the viewers any reason to subscribe to you?
subscribe to me.
Yeah.
I'm
Your
the
high
videos
quality
on my
videos.
channel. The videos on my channel. Wait, you watch some of the videos on my channel?
I mean, I didn't. I took a look at the titles. I didn't get around to watching them yet. I was going to. I was kind of saddened when I saw that they only had like 20 views. So. But hey, I mean, you can rise in the ranks. Before you give closing thoughts, I was just thinking that this happens to me a lot, and it just definitely happened to me way back in like 2016, where it's like a non-Muslim would come to you in the comment section with a wacky claim, a complete whack claim, something on par with this video. And then you're thinking, okay, you research the Quran and Hadith, you don't find anything that supports what they're saying. So you're like, okay, where are you getting this from? Then years or months pass, and you watch a David Wood video, or you watch an Islam Critique video, or you watch a Jay Smith video, any video like that. And you're like, oh, so that's where they're getting this nonsense from. And unfortunately, that's the reality. So many of these people are blind sheep. They just take these guys at their word. And so when they come to you, are all like, hey, how come Islam doesn't honor fathers? Like, what are you talking about? Where are you getting that from? Yeah, well, the Quran says to not listen to your fathers if they're worshiping idols. What do you say to that? Yes?
You don't listen to
Like, I don't know what else you want me to say. So yeah,
It's
reasons
true.
to
These
subscribe
guys,
to you.
there are no real reasons. I mean, subscribe to me. Here are the people right now that my channel is focused on. New Muslims and non-Muslims interested in Islam. Really, that's the only kind of content I have on my channel right now. I don't really have anything else. I mean, actually, the first few videos that I released weren't even for the public. It was just a man was interested in Islam, so he asked me to teach him a little about it, and so on and so forth. But he lives in Indianapolis, and I'm in Florida, so I told him, I'll put some videos on my YouTube, and you can go ahead and watch them. That's how my videos even started. So it's really all geared towards new Muslims and stuff like that.
Hey,
It's no
that's
other content right now.
that's a good thing. I mean, if there
Yep.
happen to be any David Wood fans who are actually open-minded watching this, they can check your channel out.
They could check my channel out, but I don't have any reputations against David Wood on my channel.
True, but
But if someone were to ask me,
you do have things
uh-huh,
that get new people interested in Islam. Just breaking down the basics.
yeah.
Because the
And
thing
I
is,
mean,
people like David want people to know that before you become a Muslim, know that Islam is about killing non-believers. It's like, okay, no, you're getting off into another subject and you're lying. But with videos like yours, you're
yeah.
like, okay, if you are interested in Islam, let's understand the basics, or let's understand some core things.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, besides that, if I feel the need, what I do is my videos are kind of simple stuff. They're actually about Islam. They're not really about other religions. Sometimes I come across topics or a particular thing where I have to mention another religion. I have to mention some arguments that I've heard from non-Muslims of different faiths and different religions, and then I would refute it with Islam. So one of the videos I released is actually a Ramadan series that I'm doing. Uh, I don't think I made that video public. I'm actually sending all my videos to a particular group chat that I have. I mean, I could send you the videos if you want to watch them. But one of them was where I was just explaining some basic stuff about Islam, or saying something about Islam that would go over the head of most non-Muslims. But then after a while, I came to a certain point where I had to mention some stuff against the arguments of non-Muslims and what they say about Islam. So that does happen in my videos sometimes, but it's just not geared towards that.
Okay, Hamza. And subscribe to me because I do pretty much nothing but refutations, and I've got a ton more coming up, including one on Islam critique. Remember that
Yeah.
video, Islam Hinders the Intellect?
Yes.
Yes, that's my next video coming out. The only reason I haven't released it yet is because I need to get a camera because there's a certain skit I need a camera for. There's a little joke I need a camera for in order to make the video complete. And a few other images and video clips I need to put in there. It's gonna be
Yeah.
fun.
If you get a really good camera, I'm talking about like maybe after we get a little money, I get some more money, you get some more money. And I'm talking about like a good bit. I would get like a $500 camera or something like that, where you can like, and I'm talking about a video camera, where you can, you can go to town with the tech, and you can do some stuff and correct it and fix it and do all that kind of stuff. Because right now, I mean, we only got laptops and phones to deal with. It's not like we spend all of our time doing this the entire day. We have other things to do. We were doing hifz before, we were memorizing Quran before, and so on and so forth. So there were a lot of stuff. But when we can actually properly do this, then yeah, I mean, I could spend a good nice hour or whatever just
I got
hacking.
my camera should have arrived by now. I don't know what's taking us so long. I can hook it to
It's
this
probably
laptop.
this whole coronavirus.
So inshallah, everyone,
Yeah.
stay safe. Don't get coronavirus. If you do, you got it on purpose. Have a nice Ramadan and stay away from David Wood.
Yeah. Stay away from David Wood and the likes of David Wood,
Yes,
including his best friend, Jay
and
Smith.
unfortunately, I have to say this because there's some people who don't believe it. But in accordance with Islamic law, respect your fathers. Adhere to your fathers.
Yes.
Yes. Apparently,
Yes.
we have to say this because there are people who don't believe that.
That's funny. To me, it's like that doesn't, as a Muslim, as someone who's learned Islam, you sit down, you learn Islam. I'm 22 years old now. You're like what, 23 now?
Yeah, I'm 23.
You, yeah,
Oh yeah. By the way,
you've learned
viewers, me and
Islam.
Hamza actually know each other personally. We're madrasa students.
Yeah, yes, we're fellow students. But as someone who's learned Islam for however long, whether that was specifically studying the book or learning as time passed and growing up in a Muslim and Islamic religion and so on and so forth, it makes absolutely no sense to say that you have to be you have to disrespect your fathers or rebel against your father. It just, to us, it's like you don't even, in Islam, it's so common to know you have to respect your father that you don't even need proof to say that. You don't have to quote
I
him.
mean, look.
You don't have to quote him.
Look, yeah, that's one of those self-explanatory things. Like George Washington is the first president of the United States. But I mean,
Yes.
to be honest, like I would say to these people, I'd say hatu burhanakum, and he has brought his proof, and his proof doesn't even remotely support what he's saying. If anything,
Literally.
some of the proof he brought actually supports what we've been saying.
All of the food he brought supports what we've been saying. I like everything he brought. The studies, and the thing about studies, studies from universities and different types of experiments and so on and so forth. I don't have a problem with those kind of things. They do help a lot in many circumstances and many situations, and they 9 times out of 10 actually benefit what Muslims have been saying, and by Muslims have been saying, meaning what Islam has taught the Muslims, and then the Muslims went and said it, not what random Muslims just make up and say on their own that has nothing to do with the religion.
Like the fact
But
that
at the
children are
same
born on the fitrah to believe in one God.
yeah, but at the same time, if a study goes against someone's religion or something, like, do you think I care that a bunch of ignorant human beings went and did some kind of study and they came with a conclusion that was against what my Lord says? And then, akhi, 5 years down the line, they're going to change it like every other scientific study that has ever contradicted Islam since the beginning of time.
Oh,
And
yeah,
the same
really.
thing I'm going to ask the same things to Christians and to Jews and every other people in every other religion. some non-Muslim to your some if a non-Muslim comes to Muslims, or a non-Christian go to Christians, or a non-Jew go to Jews, or so on and so forth, and mention studies that contradict certain things in their religion, are you just going to accept those studies, or are you going to accept your God? So
the first thing you got to do,
mentioning studies does.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing you got to do is just be intellectually honest and look at the study. What did the study use to carry its conclusion? What were the factors involved? And 9 times out of 10, when you look at it, you're like, okay, this is inconclusive and it could be proven wrong later. But I mean, look, it doesn't even matter, because the studies David brought here don't have anything to do with the prophet, peace upon him, because they're all about orphans who were left alone, that maybe they were only left with a foster parent, or they weren't left with anybody. Whereas the prophet,
Let me just mention.
he was left.
Let me just mention this. Yeah, let me just mention this because this. I mean, if this is going to be watched by other people and so on and so forth, if I mention this, then this is something that they could just take away from the video very easily. When David would, his entire sequence, the entire sequence of his video is literally this. He mentioned this and said, look at this. This is a big problem with Islam. Then he goes on to his next point and says, this is a big problem with Islam. But the first problem with Islam the first thing that he said was a problem with Islam refutes the second one that he said it was a problem with Islam, which refutes the third one that he said it was a problem with Islam, which refutes the fourth one. It literally does that, because he mentioned the studies later on, and then everything that just refutes the studies being applicable to the Prophet ﷺ is something he said before, and he called that a problem as well. But yet it's rejecting this next thing. So he's just contradicting himself over and over again.
Every single argument he makes as it progresses is self-refuting. It relies on self-refuting.
Because they're all straw men. And what he needs to do is he needs to his horses come and eat up that straw man, and he needs to make another one. And so he makes another one in the place of that one. So that one has to be destroyed first before he can make the next one, because they just can't coexist.
You know what it reminds me of? Have you ever seen a movie that was like unforgivably bad, and the fans try desperately to basically do what David Wood is doing to defend it? And this is what they're doing. Here's an example. The Last Jedi was unforgivable. There was a scene in The Last Jedi where Luke disrespected the Jedi's weapon by throwing the lightsaber behind his back and just walking away, almost comedically. And fans' defense for this was, look at Return of the Jedi. At the end of that movie, he also threw his lightsaber. So it's the same thing. In order to make this argument, you have to completely ignore the context. Just like David, you have to take these little scenes, these little incidents, completely take them out of context. Ignore the context completely. Say, look, the same thing happened here just like it happened there. Therefore, it happened for the exact same reason. And David has been doing this through this whole video. He has to take this small little detail, like, okay, the Muslims left Medina. I mean, they left Mecca to go to Medina. Therefore, the reason why they left Mecca to go to Medina was because the Meccans kicked them out because they didn't like how bad they were behaving. Even in the video, when he said that, he didn't give any evidence. He just said it. And everyone believed it.
And orphans, there are orphans in jail. And so therefore the Prophet ﷺ was an orphan and he's a bad guy, therefore.
Even though he said that, I'm not saying that just because you're an orphan, all these bad things are going to happen to you. You might be a really good exception. You might end up getting Nobel Prizes. There are plenty of factors that play into this. Like, okay, so you don't have to make it sound like there's only one way this will turn out. Especially because the Prophet had his heart washed.
What's more worthy of a Nobel Prize than being the most influential man in history?
What's more worthy of a Nobel Prize than having your heart washed and your connection with Shaitan ripped out?
Cool. Right?
Forever. I mean, that makes you the most purest person ever. I mean, even Jesus was tempted by Satan. Although, of course, he passed the test, he was still tempted. The Prophet couldn't even be tempted.
Yeah. He couldn't even be tempted. So there, if we're doing this whole prophet versus prophet thing, which is not something Muslims do or should do, and we're not really even doing that. But one of the things I'd like to mention is this. And it's in Christianity, it seems you just have to hate the Prophet ﷺ in order to to be at home with your own beliefs. But so far as Jesus is concerned, then what needs to be understood is that the only time uh, you will hear us saying something negative about Jesus is actually because Jesus is a character. Okay, he's a character who's been giving certain actions and certain statements and certain reactions through biblical literature, which is not written by God, but it's written by a bunch of authors, which everyone agrees upon, even Christians. And as a result of that, we're taking that character and we're having problems with him. We don't actually have problems with the actual historical figure who's actually Jesus. We just believe he says such and such things.
Right.
And when it is mentioned that he said such and such things, sometimes we will criticize those things and it will look like we're criticizing Jesus himself, but we're not. He's obviously one of the greatest prophets of all time, and we believe him to be so, and we love him for that. And we say alayhi salam after his name, and we don't have a problem. Like I don't know why Christians think we have this kind of weird problem with Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. I mean, I don't know how many lectures have been on him just declaring his how awesome he is and how great he is and so on and so forth. The Prophet ﷺ used to talk about him and say nice things about him, just like he
Wait,
did
hang
with
on.
all of the previous prophets.
Hang on. On that note, David actually made a video on that. It's actually pretty short. I think it's only 4 minutes, where he said that we don't respect Jesus. Now, you probably think that his justification is just like what Ergen Cantor said, because remember Ergen Cantor was all like, Jesus claimed to be God because he said he's the Messiah, and since you don't accept him as God, you cannot respect him. You can say you revere him, but you cannot respect him. No, David doesn't say that. What he says is actually less stupid, but still pretty stupid.
There's no malice or ill intent in the hearts of the Muslims against Jesus, but the same can't be said for Christians generally in terms of their malice and ill intent for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
that's proof that our creed can survive under any test. Whether we're talking about another prophet, then we have no problem with that prophet because
Anna,
it has nothing, it has no effect on our belief system and our belief in Allah. If they talk about evolution, we evolved in this way, we evolved that way. It doesn't have any real effect on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We only reject it because we know it's not true, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said we didn't go through that in one way or another, and so on and so forth. Whatever religion, whatever lens you put Islam under, it just survives very easily. It's because it's coherent, it's straightforward. Don't worship other objects of worship. Only worship Allah. Don't
But
worship anyone besides
the
Allah.
black stone.
Don't worship. Mhm.
Muhammad
True. Go
But
ahead.
but the black stone.
Right? And
We're
I'm
never gonna
saying,
change that.
like,
Look, when they whine about the black stone, then it's just this is just another example of them grasping at straws, because they know we don't
yeah,
support idolatry. They know that. They're just trying to
yes.
find some way to say we do.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَا تَجِدَنَّ وَلَا تَجِدَنَّ أَقْرَبَهُم مَوَدَّةً لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ قَالُوا إِنَّا نَصَارَى ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ مِنْهُمْ قِسِّيسِينَ وَرُهْبَانًا وَأَنَّهُمْ لَا يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you'll find that the closest people generally to the believers are actually those who call themselves Christians. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives his reasoning. What we need to understand about particular Christians in particular is that we don't have any kind of malice against Christians or people. We just have a problem. I mean, it's what it is. It's just really, really sad. I really don't like and don't I really have a major problem with people worshiping something they're not supposed to worship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is bearing witness to the kindness that's generally in their heart. Yet they're doing something that's going to end up destroying them. So that's where we're coming from when we're like ridiculous. Like, you shouldn't do this. Because All we are saying is don't worship. I mean, you have Christianity, and look, it's one of the most incoherent religions, and I don't mean any disrespect to Christians or you, as a human being. I'm just going to be honest though, that the religion of Christianity are saying the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost, whatever. These three are one, they're God, and so on and so forth. Sheikh,
No,
you can't even you. Uh huh.
the primary tenet of Christianity, even if you don't believe in that, is Jesus did not come to abolish the law. Jesus did not come to abolish the law. He came to fulfill the law, and he fulfilled the law by dying on the cross for our sins, thereby abolishing the law. Which is
Yeah, but
about as circular as it can get.
there are so many there are so many contradictions within itself. But I'm not trying to get at the contradiction, even though we have an ayah for that in the Quran. وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِي اخْتِلَافٍ كَثِيرًا. If it's from other than Allah, there's gonna be a lot of contradictions in it. So proof that the Bible is not inspired by God is that there are contradictions in it. But here's the thing. Here's what I was getting at, which I think is a much bigger problem than just contradiction in a book, and that is this: you have your core, absolutely foundational creed, and you're struggling in the Bible to find that creed. Let's say you'll find it in one or two verses. Those one or two verses can be interpreted in another way. Even if the correct interpretation is what you think, it being able to be interpreted in another way, while it's the foundation of your creed, is a major problem. The foundation of the creed of the Muslims is there's no object of worship worthy of worship other than Allah. Done. That statement is found in the Quran unequivocally, so clear, with absolutely no ambiguity in the Quran, hundreds, thousands of times in different wordings without any ambiguity at all. And then we just come and say, look, that's what we're proclaiming. But you're coming and saying, oh, we proclaim Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I'm saying, Sheikh, 90% of your Bible, 90%, and that's not an exaggeration, has nothing to do with your foundational creed. Don't you see that there's
It
a problem
actually
there?
refutes it.
Something's going on. Yes.
I mean, like, you don't, it's not like you have, for example, God doesn't say how many persons is in his Godhead. He just straight up says, I'm the Lord your God, and besides me there's no other. And like, that's a single person saying that he is the Lord your God. And you guys still want to say that there's
Actually,
multiple persons.
the crazy thing is, give me a minute, actually. I want to, uh, I had a note. It was a little note. I think it would be good to mention this particular note. It was very important. And it goes like this. If there are if there are three different independent consciousnesses to receive worship and acknowledge it, which is obviously the Trinity. The Holy Spirit is conscious, the Father is conscious, the Son is conscious, they're independent, and they're different from one another. So if they're conscious and they're all capable of receiving worship and acknowledging worship, then there are three different objects of worship. And that at the end of the day is worshiping other
Yes.
than the one object of worship, which is Allah. Each independent receiver of this worship is an independent object of worship, a thing.
Okay, I don't know what just
It
happened.
went off again. Oh my God, I was going on a tangent. I had such a good thing. But you
I
know
am
what?
so
Instead of
sorry. But I mean, this
what
time it
I'm
was my
gonna
fault.
No, that's fine. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna send you the little. It's like a paragraph or something. I'm gonna send you
Yeah, I
this.
actually
You
remember
can read it.
back in class. I mean, it wasn't in class, but it was way before this COVID-19 thing. I remember making this argument. It's like, not to the whole consciousness thing, that didn't come to mind, but it was like, if you acknowledge that a person, let's not say it's a tangible thing, it's not a being, but you're directing your worship toward an individual, Jesus as an individual, the Father as an individual, the Holy Spirit as an individual. Therefore, you're worshiping. You have three objects of worship. It doesn't matter. You could tell me all day long they're part of the single Godhead, body, being, whatever. Because honestly, if you're worshiping three different persons, then God being one being is irrelevant. You're still worshiping three persons. You still have three objects of worship.
Yes.
Yes. So, in closing, everyone, respect your father. I can't believe I have to say this. Stay away from David Wood. Learn Islam. Don't catch COVID-19, because if you do, then it's your fault. And subscribe.
What? Because it's your fault. Don't catch COVID-19 because it's so contagious that if you watch our videos, you will get us contaminated with it.
Yeah. And we don't. And if that happens, we don't need you watching our videos. Although we do. Want, Although we do want the views anyway, so we can take it.
That's better. Yeah. Watch our videos. Watch our videos from a distance. Actually, but everyone should stay safe.
So leave a subscribe, give a like, and follow us on notification.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
I guess that's that. I sent you the text.
Yeah, I see it.
Why? Why are you gonna sound like that?